All right, we are streaming and we're going to start recording. So, we're broadcasting live, relatively speaking, now, which is fine. Huh. Yeah, that's cool. All right, so. What am I looking for? I'm looking for this tab here. I'm going to pull this one away because it's fun to Twitter while I'm waiting. And as always, welcome to the pre-show where it's fucking lame. You're going to hear my spouse in the background just talking to the stream. No, don't worry about it. It's a pre-show. It's not main show. You can do whatever you want. Pete Buttigieg is the dog slayer. I'm going to share this. I'm going to copy the link. I don't want to. Yeah. Woo! And there's us. How does that look? Okay. Oh, I guess I should go do the thing. Right? I should go do the thing. Okay. Like I said, this is behind the scenes stuff. So, don't think too hard about it. Somebody's watching on YouTube. YouTube viewer, shout out, leave a comment, and I will address it. I am just going to go ahead here. They say they don't know much about us on Twitch. So let's go ahead and make a bio right now. How should we make it? What is that? No, we're going live on Twitch. Okay, whatever. These are stupid notifications. Don't need them. Oh, I'm doing it all myself. We're not updating that profile picture. I know it's off brand, but rock's pretty hard. Behind the scenes, it's me. Yo, what's up, Giga Chad? Ask away on the questions. Don't be afraid. You had some good ones last time. Go for it. In fact, hold on. We had a question. Fuckles. I think you presented a question last time that I wanted to address this time. And this is the perfect time to do it. What the fuck was that? What was last week's episode? That would have been the 15th. Hold on. I've done it a few times for sure. Would a Nietzschean critique of free will and political opinion have used for the left? What's good? You know who I be? I know. Yeah, and chat, all chatters, don't be afraid. Throw out questions. I like questions. It's like one of them college lectures. You get it for free. I didn't give you any Philosophy 101 course. After that, no. Let's see, profile. We're some boys making content. That's all. Don't think too hard. That's all. Alright, let's put some links in there. Oh, at. Oh shit! Sorry, I'm doing that. Tell me this is Cohen. I said hello. Genshin's going great, and honey,
What?
your boy says hi.
Which boy?
You know which boy?
Oh, Joseph.
Yeah, you're not supposed to say his name though. Remember, we're live.
Sorry.
Schmo Meth.
No meth.
No Meth. That's his name. Yeah, come over here. Just stay off the camera. Camera's over here. See? Look. No, come over here.
No.
Yeah. I can do one of those pimple popper streams if you want. I can just pop some pimples on my ass on camera. Say what? That I'm gonna pop my ass pimples on camera for likes? What? Well, you can't say my. Damn it! We're live. You can't say real names. Anne.
Sorry, Dan.
Yeah.
No, Dan.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
God damn it. Do it. See? Chat wants me to pop my ass pimples on stream. So. Yeah, you can't see what I'm doing. You can't see what gesture I'm making. I'm just loudly tapping my tobacco tin. Yeah, so I'm going to be drawing again tonight, so I got to get all paint up. And Pete the Dog Slayer is the new Pete Buttigieg movie. Cool. There we go. That's how I want that display. Well, there. Yeah, you bunch of fucks on Twitch. Oh, we've just been banned from Twitch. How about that? You hate to see it, folks. You point out that Amazon's being shitty, and suddenly they do it. Bam! Got his ass. There's been something I've been meaning to tell you about the podcast at the end of the town. All right. And let's go. What if I can get the stream chat to show over here? So far, no. Yeah, I'm not allowed to do the pimple popper videos. I'm told that violates sexual content on all 3 platforms because my ass is too sexy. Sorry. What do you mean, no? You're supposed to agree to that. Damn it. Honey, can you just chant me so horny in the background while I talk the whole night?
Not because of no men.
Okay. Well, what if he's not here though? Guess he's not now. It's fine. My wife's, white. It's not that big of a deal. Oh man, Jake's not even gonna be here tonight to count the hailers. All right, should start. I should do that too. Oh man, we got a Discord. Okay, and we're getting warmed up. Ugh. Yeah. Ugh. Ha, that's a fun Wojak. Wojak. Alright, this is just me reacting to content you can't see. Okay. I should start doing more advertising, but I'm just so god awful lazy. I have more fun doing the thing than advertising the thing. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. Like I said, don't be afraid to chat. Ask me anything. Now's the time. John is eating his 9th dinner. But what you don't know about John is that he eats. Take 2 of your fingers, right? Kind of wrap them like this. Okay, these 2 right here. He eats about half of that of each finger for a meal. So he eats like 9 very tiny meals. Like if you give him a thing of sliced almonds like a squirrel, he can eat all winter. It's amazing. The man eats practically nothing. Thinnest one on the show. Yeah, these are all real facts. I'm second thinnest, to give you an idea. Now, Jank is technically thinner than me, but he's also 19 feet tall. So, his weight is mostly in the bone structure and the muscle mass needed to support a 19-foot tall frame. Funny enough, though, his torso is the same length as any other humans. It's weird. Where's that camera at? Where the camera hitting? About right. Where? I don't know for my gestures. Okay, so it's going to be left-handed gestures tonight. Oh, and we'll rehash what we talked about last time when the actual show starts, because I might take a break and start a second recording. I don't know. Probably not. It's kind of more fun to just do like 3 straight hours. It's kind of more fun. Okay. Interesting. Interesting. Is that Mike Tyson? What about the tattoo? It has to be. Okay. All right. So, what the hell's that? Let's just report the video for being too cool. All right. I should get started on something. So, instead of my beloved Pete the Dog Slayer, just a quick little recap from last time. So, on the topic of free will, which is a fantastically well debated topic, right? We're going to start with one person. That would be Jesus Christ, our Lord and Savior. And according to the theocratic interpretation, this fella, and according to them, it definitely is a fella, starts with a G, ends with odd, gifted everybody who ever did, will, or is alive something called, this is kind of my interpretation of Asia, free will. All right, so that's where we get this term, right? At least if you're a Christian, that's where you learn this term. And free will, no, I don't want to save it. God, look at that shit. And free will in that context gives you the ability to do any old thing you want, including sin. You know, and that's, in the classic vernacular, that's driving the car, right? Let's be careful about how we do this. So make it a VW bug. Into the train tunnel before you're married, right? I think you get the idea what I'm going for here. Okay, that's that. That can be my favorite phrase ever, coveting your neighbor's ass or your neighbor's donkey. That can be talking shit on your parents or God. And depending on how much you read into it or how seriously you take it, that can be eating those little shrimpies you like to eat, little seafood shrimpies. We love our shrimps, don't we? And, yeah. So free will is kind of a double-edged sword because you have the ability to do whatever you want with free will while you're alive. But once you're dead, Anubis, shit, sorry, God, shit, sorry, St. Peter, and a lot of them, a lot of judges in the afterlife, they weigh your deeds in some fashion. Hold on, let's see what he wants. Are you in? Let's see if he wants in. Might have a guest. Going total impromptu. So the purpose of free will is to give you the opportunity to be a complete fuck up, but ask you very nicely not to be a complete fuck up. And in that kind of a formation, we see the origins of this little fella from last time. Or gal, or NB. This is our little buddy, the monad. The individual subject. Now, if you're a Marxist, this shouldn't really be surprised. You shouldn't really be surprised, excuse me. I am tired from work. I worked a full day, too. And now I'm doing this shit. This is the monad, the singular. Das Eins. Uno. Right? There's our monad, and I wrote that a little too far down, so let me see if I can. Yeah, see? There's our little individual subject, the monad. So, clear that out. So our monad here, our poor little legless and armless monad, right? Ooh, look, and kind of make him look like he has little Goomba feet. There we go. And he's walking too, based on how positioned his feet. Ah, see, I'm better at art than I thought I was. Anywho, so our little monad, Moni, we'll call him Moni. Moni, this is kind of fun, I'm sorry. Especially because my drawings are so bad, so it's like extra fun to draw. Because you know they're going to be terrible, but you don't know in what specific way they're going to be terrible. Like if you notice, I can't draw in a straight line. I have that mental illness that Will had in the Silence of the Lambs TV show, Hannibal. Can't draw straight. Can't draw a clock. Oh, okay. Come on, jump on. When ready. You gotta get a phone card. I use a phone card. I gotta go get one tomorrow. So I'm an old man and I'm cheap. Moni. I don't want to be locked into a contract with telecommunications companies. So Moni the monad, the individual subject, is different in a lot of ways from the serf, right? In economic terms, the Moni is going to be a capitalist, or it's going to be a proletariat, instead of a serf or a slave. The Moni has social relationships. But the Moni's problems start with Moni's little body. Specifically, Moni represents one individual point, one little dot. You look at the sky, you see one star. It's a little tiny little pinpoint. That's all the monad is, just one little pinpoint. Each person, one tiny little pinpoint. Now there's 7 billion little pinpoints, give or take, but just one little point. So we run into geographic problems. We run into geometric problems. We run into, as we put it last time, the laws of the physical universe. The material universe, by itself, imposes limitations on the monad that the serf really didn't have to worry about. The serf is tied, right? Can I draw that up here? So the serf, okay, we'll make it a little circle slime. But the serf is kind of, here's the ground, shackled to the land. The serf is tied to the land intrinsically. And through his property relationships with the king and the duke and the lord and the sheriff and so on, the serf's existence is holistic. So everything he can conceive of or achieve is tied to that piece of dirt. And this is what the bourgeoisie took advantage of when they revolted. They took his old theocratic notion of free will, and they took the idea of applying that free will to the serf, which was highly appealing and effective. You create a new person. You create a new type of person. Just as the arrival at the serf was revolutionary in and of its time, instead of just being a survivalist creature, this was a creature that lived on a plot of land permanently, worked that land, the land nourished that creature, and the surplus of that land was distributed throughout society haphazardly, right? Feudalism is notorious for famines. Part of that is sheer technological, right? Sheer scale. It's hard to refrigerate. It's hard to generate additional crops. But that's the serf's whole existence. It lives or dies by the land it is on. The monad has no problem there. right? The new property relationships, the monad is free, in theory, to move about society. It can change its station. It is only tied to land that it wants to be tied to. But now again, we have the geographic problem, right? Because now the whole world is open to the monad, at least in theory. And within that theory, what the monad can do to the land can be limited. It has a geometric problem. It can't move up and down very easily. If it tries to move down, it has to swim very deep under conditions it's not meant to survive in. And if it tries to go up, it has the limitation of gravity. It doesn't just aimlessly drift upwards or fly upwards at its own volition. Technologies increase the ability of movement, but ultimately are still bound to those movements, right? Can't take a submarine into space. Can't take a submarine to the core of the Earth. Can't take an airplane to space. If you're in a spaceship, you're stuck inside that spaceship, or the vacuum of space will obliterate the monad. These are hard limits. Even being on extraplanetary soil has a hard physical limit on the monad. Right? It may not be designed to survive it. So the monad can be under some pretty severe constraints. And that's just assuming that we're talking about the external, right? We're talking about the external material world that the monad experiences. We haven't even begun to talk about at this point all of the internal complications and the physical limitations, that barrier between the mental and the physical, the psychic and the real. And within those limitations, if I don't have these, my experience, my free will is going to be modified. If I don't have legs, my free will is going to be modified. If I'm blind, I'm deaf, I can't smell, I can't taste. I have trouble breathing. I have trouble digesting. All of these things are going to cause me to experience the material world differently from another individual subject, right? That's going to play a part here. If we take just the brain, we have all sorts of psychic trauma, phobias and whatnot, depression, etc. We have physical trauma to the brain. Blunt force injuries can cause brain death in certain sectors. This is your CTE diagnosis and things like that. Schizophrenia causes brain death, which produces problems both processing information in terms of receiving it, because the electric signals may be firing into a dead space or a dulled space, and that electric signal may be lost, causing confusion, or it may actually be distorted through that dead matter as it arrives at a nerve signal that is still living and still functioning, causing the message to come through poorly, right? This is the delusional schizophrenia, right? We also have problems with ideology, the programming of that brain. So we have all sorts of physical and mental limitations to the monad, and we have external limitations to the monad. All before we ever get to the point where, we introduce another monad or another thing. The relationship of the monad's body to things, and the relationship of the monad's body to other monads. So that's where we're going to be starting tonight here in just about half an hour, a little bit longer than that. I believe somebody's in the Discord. Who would that be?
Hey, what's up? What's going on?
Oh, there he is. There's my man.
Does this sound okay?
Yeah. Very loud.
I'm doing a different setup like every week now. All right, hang on.
Okay. It's very, very loud, actually. It's not terrible. Okay. Oh, that's okay.
There we go.
Yeah, you sound great. I don't know. We might be having a guest, and I'm calling an audible. We'll see if he wants to join. I'm watching my phone.
Oh hell yeah.
See, I don't want the ringer on though. Oh, let's see here.
And we got like we got John later, right? And then I think Jenk said he had like normal real world lame shit to do.
Yeah, and Gangsta is wild carding it. I'm also trying to watch chat, which hasn't said anything in a while, which is fine. You know, I did the rehash at the beginning of this, so like, I'll do another short form rehash whenever we actually start.
Hmm.
Cool. I lost my mouse. It's badass. It's gonna be cool. It's gonna be real easy to figure out where I'm typing and what I'm doing. Real easy.
Kind of like I'm mostly done setting up to go on a sojourn tomorrow.
Ugh. Man, you go on a lot of the weekend runs.
Like we got the big extended family, so like there's kind of something going on every weekend, but then we're trying to pick and choose like okay, which squad actually hits hardest for like, middle-aged people with kids like, and based
Yeah.
on who's going this weekend, it's like, well, okay, this is the perfect squad to add us in with our kids the exact ages that they are. And I'd put in for it at work, and they approved it like dumbasses earlier this week before they knew they were working Sunday. So
Haha.
yeah, I got that Saturday off, so I ain't required to do no Sunday. Gonna be awful lonesome up at the old racism factory trying to fucking manufacture and package racisms without this guy on old Sunday. But too bad. Fuck you guys. Shouldn't have approved it. Don't you know you should never approve any vacation if you're a manager? Don't you know that?
That was your first mistake.
I don't know. I can't even. I have to turn down so much just to be able to talk to them, my fellow coworkers, my management, everybody, about anything that happens in there. Because like, I couldn't even say no shit like that. That'd go over everybody's head. Like if I'm just standing there, I'm just like, man, why do they ever actually approve any time off? People were like, huh? Like, well, I just don't see how we're gonna, make the line go up. If you guys keep approving all this time off and shit, like if we just worked every single scheduled day, we could probably like make the line go up, right? Like,
Yeah.
I'll say some shit like, pretty soon we're gonna be out of other shit to try, and like, there's one guy that works there that's hip enough to actually catch that, to actually be like, this motherfucker is saying that if capitalism eats shit hard enough, there won't be no days off. Like, he's the only guy that works there that's cool enough to, but the rest of them know. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
doing it just to amuse myself. I've run those dialogue trees so many times that you know how it's like your 10th playthrough and you always pick like the sarcastic option at that point.
Yeah.
Like they put that thing there that just doesn't do anything, but you always pick that on that 10th playthrough. That's what I'm doing in most of those motherfuckers' dialogue trees, which is honestly is night and day from even a few years ago. when I would try to tell them about like, especially before the primary last year,
Yeah.
try to tell them about like, it ain't perfect, but maybe we could get a little socialized medicine, and I know it's the loud grandpa Jew, and our local Democratic representatives told you to be afraid of him, and he's a communist, and Joe is good. Joe loves the working man or whatever. I know that, but like maybe you guys want to talk about, a little socialized medicine. I still used to do that occasionally, but now I'm just like completely just cut off at work. Full alienation.
Yeah. Pretty brutal shit. All
I wonder
right.
if there's any accounting for that, if it's been measured or commented on, that if you have a long string of alienating jobs, in that interim, in that period between each one, you steel yourself to like, okay, next time you're not gonna be as connected to everybody, you're not gonna get involved in all this shit. Like, I wonder if that's measurable, how much you like it's a magnified level of alienation when you go to a completely new one that's similar to your last one. You have no connections. You're free to
Yeah.
you're free to redo all the dialogue trees however you like.
Yeah. Oh,
I
most
think
certainly.
a guy started there from our from my last work, from my previous racism factory. A guy that had worked with me there years ago started today actually. He's like, "Hey," and I'm like, "Hey, what's going on? You know, don't worry, I didn't make it that much longer than you. Don't feel bad." It's always the first nice thing you can say. And then I immediately destroyed his mind by telling him that the massively worthless motherfucker that we all used to carry is, of course, outlasted everyone.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, like, he's a pretty slick guy, but like I say, he still just kind of believes in, the most rebellious guys that I work with, the most renegade motherfuckers, the most fuck the man. Like, he's still in the back of his mind. He still believes that you can outwork your coworker or management in some way, that you can actually do it. That if you really fucking try and you get up at like 4:45 instead of 5 a.m. and you fucking eat better and you fucking don't smoke so much and you fucking do all that shit, that you can get it, you know.
What
So,
a cock.
well, I mean, yeah, but I mean, like, God, like, it's just so asynchronous with everything else about most of their personalities.
I don't know.
Otherwise, they wouldn't still be hacking it at the racism factory, right?
I don't know. I think I'm about to piss off a good portion of the anarchists by saying that a good communist at work should strive to be one of the hardest working motherfuckers so he has authenticity.
Right, I think so, yeah. And I
Yeah.
think I kind of fell into it because I kind of came from like I came from a theater and like a dance background to that environment.
Yeah.
And it informed me to beat the dog shit out of a series of repetitive motions, right?
Yes.
Like that's what that shit is a series of repetitive motions. And it informed me to become actually healthier working there. Some people it destroys their health. Uh hasn't been good for my back, but it's been much better for my respiratory and, all the other healths, you know.
And your penis.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah. It's been good for my penis.
What the fuck was that?
I'm here,
Whoa.
if that's what you're referring to.
Whoa. You're loud.
Yeah.
Am I?
Everybody's loud.
I'm not trying to
tonight.
be.
Everybody's super loud tonight.
Cuz the one machine it's easier if you hammer the pegs in with your penis.
Yeah.
Like cuz it's right the conveyor belt is right at waist height.
Yeah.
So if you just focus on something that makes you like rock hard and then you kind of do a little jump, you know.
Yeah.
Like I took dance, like I'm serious theater motherfucker, so I do a plie when I jump. Like I do like a little, like tuck my little feeties together, and then I whack that fucking peg right down into that block of racism with my rock hard cock.
You just ram it the fuck in. There you go.
Oh, hey John, what's going on? What's going on, man? What's
Hey
happening?
man,
Ah,
how many dick push-ups can you do? I'm just curious.
Well, like it's more you get to a level beyond that, like right? Like you do like about 100 dick push-up. You're getting where you're doing about 100 dick push-ups a day. And then once you get to that point, that's when you can really run the dick peg knocking machine. Because if you fall down while you're running that motherfucker, you're gonna land on your hard cock. So you gotta have a strong enough cock that you can actually catch yourself with it, like a break dancer, like with his, and then be able to like not fall because the floors in there are not clean, just caked in cum. Just it's bad. It's bad. I don't find it sexually exciting to knock the pegs down with my cock that come by on the little conveyor belt, but I think maybe some of my coworkers do because it is just like you got to walk really carefully. We don't wear steel toes anymore. We wear those restaurant shoes, the non-slip.
I hesitate to point this out, but I know you're lying because you weigh 14 pounds, which is 2 pounds lower than your birth weight. You are the tiniest one out of all of us.
Yeah, I really like
You're
smoking a lot of cigarettes.
you're 2'9", so you're obviously 2 feet taller than Ben Shapiro. But
Yeah.
you know,
I'm smoking a lot of cigarettes. I think
Yeah.
it's stunted my growth, and I think it's
since birth you've just been
artificially
chain smoking.
I think it's artificially deflated my weight. I was a
Yeah, a
healthy,
little.
was a nice healthy round boy for a few years in middle school before I started smoking.
Weighing a massive 20 pounds.
Yeah.
20.
Fucking,
If you're okay, so if you're measuring that in kilograms for you European viewers, what's 2.2 kilos per pound, right? Or is it 2.2 pounds per kilo? I always forget.
I think pounds is bigger because of
Okay.
course it is, right?
Yeah. So
Like
that's
if there was
something
it's like England, like if there was like a Texas unit of measurement, they'd be like, it's fucking, how much is a meter? All right, 500 of them.
okay, so
Like
it's something like 4 stone, or maybe a stone is 10 pounds. I don't know. So 20 pounds is roughly 40. Oh, 2.2. So every 5 is an extra one. So it's something like 44 kilos. No. I'm going to look it up because I don't. Hold on.
Yeah, there are free calculators.
Pound to
That
kilo
kind of thing.
conversion. 1 pound is 0.4 kilograms. No way you're that big. You're not 44 kg. So if you were 20 pounds, one time he was a round boy. For 20 years of his life, he was a round boy at 9 kilo. And now he's weighing about a staunch, what is that, 7? 6.35. Whereas, to put it in perspective, I am closer to this number. So he's bite-sized. You could literally just pick True up and put him in your pocket. Take him home with you. No, you wouldn't do that to... No, you wouldn't do that to True. And no. My wife is talking about putting you on my penis and just spinning you around. Did you have to use my goddamn real name every 2 seconds? Jesus Christ. That's why she's not on the show. John, how are you?
I'm doing very well. Not a whole lot to announce. Kind of a busier week for me, but
Yeah.
not eventful on any ends. In terms of the thing that really motivates me to do this show now is just like looking at the most unhinged takes.
Yeah.
Because I prefer those to like, I don't know, so any sort of like actual like ability to deal with our current situation, because it increasingly seems more and more hopeless. But you can still read like the worst takes ever and have it be funny. That like in the face of just increasingly dire situations that we appear powerless to even like fight, people will like fucking rant about bedtimes or like pooping on the street, like being good or whatever.
Yeah.
So that is bedtimes being bad and pooping on the streets being good. To clarify. So I don't know.
Yeah.
The fucking please litter as praxis post was pretty funny.
It was pretty.
So I did find that to be enjoyable, but that's been it really.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to tonight's topic though.
Are you?
Because it seems wide open enough. I want to see you draw.
We had a lot of fun with it last week. I'm gonna stick around as long as I can. I might have to cut out a little early because we got a sojourn.
Yeah.
But we had a lot of fun with it last week. I did. I don't know. I think how out of step that most people that surround us in our daily lives are with like how much of these inborn, innate, powerful substances they possess. You know, merit, will, and agency and shit. Like it to me, it's humorous a lot of times to go over this material, to explore this avenue, because
Just Dan.
I've grappled with mostly powerlessness. I think has been my conception of my interaction with the world, and I grew comfortable and got less whiny about it and really started to take like a deeper view of the meaning of it and shit. And it's probably what drove me so far to the left towards collectivism and, you know, ideas of cooperation and, you know, mutual respect and shit, to just be so blown the fuck away by how helpless this little fucking slime is.
Yeah. That's Moni the Monad.
Yeah.
That's going to be our new merch. That's going to be our one of our first pieces of merch, Moni the Monad.
For fucking A.
Yeah, I'm going to make him really angry though. Give him a little frowny face. And if I do this right, I'll make it look like he's walking. Look at that.
He's looking frowny.
Yeah, he's looking so sad right there. You got a little chunk bit out of him because I'm shaky. Oh, yeah. All right. John, do you need caught up in any of the topic before we continue on?
Can we just... I won't argue with points. I'll just let you go. Could we do this in broad strokes and then get to where you want to start?
You know what this is. You know what it is, man. This is right-wing dudes want to be born onto this earth and pretend that they did everything that ever happened before they were born.
Well, let's see.
All of the technology and shit.
Could we just broadly go over just like that whole like the monad exists in like time, space, and like there are impositions of free will just based in like physics? Can we go over that bit, or is that what you want to talk about today?
No, we already did that last time. So yeah, I'll do another quick refresh to get you up to speed.
I won't argue. You can just move through it very quickly.
So the first problem is where the idea of the monad comes from, right? It comes from the idea of free will as proposed theocratically, right? That's the individual subject. And from that, the libertarians have extrapolated this creature, Homo economicus, if you want to be technical, but the monad, right? And the monad is presumed to have unlimited free will as endowed by its creator. So it takes that religious backing and applies it. I'm going to propose something different, right? Because in the spectrum of religion, all things are possible, right? And we're materialists. Let's start ruling out possibilities and narrowing this down. So there's, of course, the geometric and geographic problems, right? Distance is a real hurdle. I can't really influence Neptune. Easy enough?
Yeah.
In no reasonable amount of time can I influence Neptune. I have a problem with time then as a function, right? If distance is just a measurement of time. I have a problem with time. I'm going to use the four square here, Cartesian space or what have you. So I have a problem that if I'm at point A, which is my childhood, the decisions I make then may not be able to be expressed by my adult self. Join in 10, great. Okay, so let's see if it happens. We might have to spend a little bit of time getting Arcano in, but which we haven't heard from him in a while, so this would be cool, right?
Oh hell yeah, yeah.
But we have we have these actual geometric limits, right? Vertical and horizontally. We can only travel so far so quickly. We can only go up or down so far without machine assistance, right? And then we have limitations on our physical bodies. If we're missing limbs, we're missing organs, our experience as a material creature can change. Measurement of sexy time. Ooh. Gangsta in the chat, perhaps, watching along. And then we have these limitations imposed in our brain, right? We have psychic limitations. Those can be caused by trauma, right? Generation of a phobia, mental illness. Past experience, utilize, the intersection with time. Past experience can tell us to do or not to do something. We also have physical trauma to the brain, right? Brain death associated with schizophrenia. And we have brain death associated with CTE, i.e. external injury internalized, right? That can modify our thoughts. And then, of course, there's ideology, right? That subliminal programming that gives us a framework to interpret data. But at the same time, bends our interpretation of data. It has that twofold effect, right? And those are all the individual limitations that we came up with. Oh, you're watching.
Oh, wait, you can hear me?
Yeah, I can hear it. You might want to mute it. What's up, dude?
What up, bruh?
Not much.
I see your art skills improving.
Yeah, look at that. I made him look like he's walking tonight and made him mad.
Very close to a Goomba.
Mm-hmm.
That's what he does.
Goombad.
Don't say that. Nintendo's gonna nuke us from Earth or from low orbit.
Yeah.
He will tell you.
It's
he
close
will tell
enough,
you.
but different enough that they
I
can't
know.
I'm gonna give him little eyes too. How do you like that?
That's gonna be that's finally gonna be the thing that like gets us in trouble. It's not gonna have anything to do with like ideology stuff. It's just we're gonna draw something one day or like have something on stream that like vaguely resembles Link or the Triforce or some shit, and we're all gonna be fucking terminated with prejudice.
They're gonna be like content warning, and we're gonna look up the clip, and it's gonna be like, and in this Hitler, and you draw a Goomba, and it's like, no, not the Goomba,
not the Goomba.
Yeah, violating Hitler's copyright is fine. It's the Goomba copyright they're gonna be mad at. Well, we already got Twitch strikes just for saying the word Goomba, so fuck, we're already done. All right, so I'm going to try to keep an eye on chat too, so chat can participate and ask questions. It is an open. We start in a couple of minutes. We're going to try to get Arcano in, long-awaited return.
That would be sweet, but we can ask him some of the presumptions about these concepts. He might have some insights on the monad. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, we'll
some
pick
of that
his
brain in the jar shit.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I'll tell you what. Here's what I think of simulation theory. Simulation theory is a bunch of religious bullshit for techno nerds.
I agree. Wholeheartedly.
Fucking wankers are trying to find their own.
They're just like rich and billionaires, and they're like, well, because I control what I control, I guess I can control the universe, so it must be a simulation made for me.
Yeah, come the fuck on.
And then the science guys are like, oh, okay, just keep funding us.
Yeah, whatever play pretend bullshit makes you happy, rich guy who I have to turn to for funding. Yeah,
my only real understanding.
Yeah.
My only real understanding of simulation theory is that it doesn't it like ultimately conclude it doesn't actually matter if it's true or not.
Yeah.
Isn't it like a huge part? That's like a huge portion of it. So
it's a lot like philosophy.
Yeah. Well, on some level, I think it is. I think it's even more pointless than a lot of philosophy because I don't think it offers any actual insight into anything in a way that like I don't know, fucking talking about like the allegory of the cave might at least like get you somewhere or like at least make you think, whereas simulation theory is like makes you think but in like the way that you just fucking ripped a bomb.
Well, I mean it's like all their ideologies where they're like trying to justify just doing the most awful shit, and it's easy to do that when you can just say it's a simulation, it doesn't matter.
Well, especially for the tech people, like it does just justify what you were already doing anyway.
Yeah.
one of those things you couldn't fucking
I wonder
prove
why
anyway.
they like it.
They fucking
Whoa.
love shit like that. They love that shit. They love the fucking apocalypse fantasy. They
Hmm.
love shit where it's a game or a contest of some kind and nothing has any. I mean, it's pretty fucking just the idea of a simulation that good is pretty one to one with what you experience anyway. So it's like if that was a successful cult, then it's just a dice roll every time they try to get somebody in. It's just like,
Yeah.
do you think it would be convenient to spend the rest of your life pretending that this is a simulation? Is the real question. Do you think that would be convenient? And some percentage of people are going to be like, yeah, hell yeah.
I don't know,
Bunch of
dog. That heat death of the universe
dumb.
seems pretty final.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I mean, some of them might be like, well, if we're a simulation, like one level up, they've somehow contended with that. But in
No,
our
you're a
simulation,
simulation.
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. I mean, there are only two options there to be like, well, it doesn't matter any like you freely admit that like you can't tell, so it doesn't matter anyway. And like two, your mother's a simulation or some shit.
Yeah.
Just tell them some
Yeah.
bullshit.
Yeah.
Tell them to fuck off
Yeah.
because you're not going to get anything out of it that's like particularly useful or whatever.
Come on, Elon, just jerk off already.
Well,
Call it a day.
again,
Get in my face.
think about it for a second. What's the problem with religion? We know that it's there's a four square, right? 25% odds are true. God's real and there's evidence. God's not real and there's evidence. God's real and there's no evidence. God's not real and there's no evidence. The problem is we know there's no evidence for or against God, so gone. So we have a 50-50 binary. What's the problem with simulation theory? 25% odds we're in a simulation, we have evidence. 25% odds, we're in a simulation, and we're not in a simulation and there's evidence. 25% odds we're in a simulation and there's no evidence. 25% odds we're not in a simulation and there's no evidence. Once again, we're at the religious binary. Doesn't matter. Your choice, it boils down to what you want to believe in. Fucking useless thought exercise. It's useless for the atheists. It's useless for the anti-simulation theory people. It's useless for the simulation theory people. And it's useless for the religious. Fucking waste of time debating dumb bullshit. Useless.
It occurs to me that its real function is basically just to be masturbation fodder for techno feudalism.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think like it carries with it the assumption that like it carries with it some implication that like if simulations could ever be that good, then maybe if you support tech enough, you'll get to like have your own simulation where you get to do shit or like have your own heaven basically. I think it has some levels of implication about like
religious bullshit.
indulgence on like a pleasurable level. I think it's implied somewhere.
Yeah, it's just like high thoughts, really.
Yeah, that we could freeze ourselves in machines, let ourselves drift through dark space, protected from the sheer vacuum, and enjoy a perfect heaven of our own existence. The monad perfected.
I mean, ultimately, there would have to be something that powers that machine to do the computation for an entire universe or simulation of a universe.
Yeah.
And that would require tremendous energy, which would require tremendous heat, which again, heat death of the universe. It's I don't know. I don't know, dog. It might just be them reifying and viciously abstracting some goddamn math and saying math says that this could be a simulation and
well, that's all it is.
It's like Inception because every level of the simulation time extends, so you can just keep like making simulations of simulations, and that will like.
All I know is I didn't choose this fucking simulation.
Well, if you actually go through, like Kurzgesagt does a video on it, but if you watch their video, they start talking about the probabilities you're in a simulation, and they use really, really vague terms. And all they say is, well, the probability increases because this is theoretically possible. The probability increases again because it's theoretically possible. The probability increases again. Now it's more likely you're in a situation than you're not. If you don't give me the fucking numbers, dude, how am I supposed to judge? Yeah. You're making a blanket assertion, right? But of course you're making a blanket fucking assertion. This is your religious belief. This is a bunch of dumb bullshit. It's not evidence. You can't math your way into fucking God, morons. You can't do it. Quit trying to jerk your little tech brains off and how smart you are because you're babbling fucking bullshit. And it is
They're not even that
insulting.
smart.
Yeah, it's not even that clever. Like, oh, God could be real because the probability that God is real to you is zero. But then, for phenomena you can't explain, for all the number of phenomena you can't explain, the probability rises and rises and rises. And at some point, you're going to reach something you can't actually explain, or somebody else can't explain for you or to you. And at that point, the probability of God real increases. And shut the fuck up. That's not probability
Wait a minute,
increases.
What's quantum?
Yeah. Probability increases is not actually a fucking number, nerd. So shut the fuck up. Okay?
Well, the other thing
That's not a
just
number.
about that,
Yes.
to draw it up with a bow, is that the only real difference between the two of them is that between the topic of whether God is real or not and simulation theory is that like God being real implies like some like beginning point of temporal existence where God was able to split from humanity and like create humanity, and then like everything proceeded from there. Whereas simulation theory is not about the origin point of the universe, but instead about the point at which the first civilization that was the actual origin point then creates another universe.
Is this really the topic for today?
No, we're doing free will.
I'm going to end this right now, which is just to say that the one piece of simulation theory that I always absorbed as being probably the most likely was that they freely admit, well, either we're in a simulation or there's no civilization that can ever actually achieve that much technological advancement because they all kill themselves somehow. And like that makes a lot more sense to me, honestly.
It makes
They
more
either
sense
all
under
kill themselves or
capitalism.
die somehow.
Yeah.
All right. I hate that I hate that I gotta go take care of some bullshit right now because we're having the most fun.
You were told to take care of your bullshit and worry about the show last anyway, so don't hate to do it. Just go do it. Fuck them.
All right. Do that before the official intro of the show because I don't.
Too
I don't
late.
want you to say that you'll be joined by. I don't know if you'll be joined by.
I'll
be
introduce
back,
you
maybe.
when you show up. Just go knock knock, and I'll know what to say.
All right, I'll be back maybe.
All right, love you. Don't
I
die.
love you guys. I'll be back.
See ya.
It's an arduous trek for him because he's only 4 foot tall.
Ooh.
That's
Yeah.
how that
City.
goes.
He's smaller than Gangstacles was our leanest and meanest until we put True on the show.
Now I'm only the meanest.
Yes, by far. When it comes to video games, you are the meanest.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you by far are. That's indisputable. You're the king of them.
Shitting down necks. Taking
Yes.
names.
All right. And we're going to take some names right now because this is the Sons of Trier live stream and podcast. I'm your host with the least, the beast from the east, the Jewish feast, the man obsessed with free will, the man who's always acting like a pill, Dan Cohen. And I'm joined by John Sinclair.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Been a little while since you've been in the house, so good to see you back.
Good to see you. It's good to hear from everybody too.
Yes. We love that you're not dead. And
I try.
I'm joined by Eat the Rich, a.k.a. Gangstacles, a.k.a. No Limits, a.k.a. the Puerto Rican Rattlesnake, a.k.a. the artist formerly known as Gangstacles. What's the name?
and Michael Jordan Peterson.
And Michael Jordan Peterson.
That's your best one so far.
Yes.
That's my favorite.
Oh,
Womp, 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 womp.
babies.
Womp, 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 womp. It's good to have you back. I'm here to blow your mind again tonight
Awesome.
with the high level shit. Do you want to recap from last week? I've done it like 3 times, so.
Okay, yeah. Give me the recap. I kind of trailed off at the end there last time.
That's okay. So, the recap, of course, we're doing free will again. We're going to introduce some problems, and we're gonna ponder over a question that came up in our Discord, which you can get invited to when I put out one of my sporadic invites. So watch on Twitter @Ketzeran. And to recap, we have the monad, the individual subject, right? The monad is born from the religious tradition of free will, and free will is carried over, but then it's transformed, right? So when the religious and the feudals had it, free will meant one thing, essentially service to God and the ability to do right or wrong, i.e. sin or not sin. And the libertarians, the bourgeoisie, they transform that into the monad subject, the individual subject, who's allegedly, with lip service to the religious, endowed with inalienable rights in its creator, right? That's what's in the U.S. Constitution. The French have a similar notion. Whatever created this thing, man or divine, gave it certain inalienable rights. They gave it free will. They gave it the ability to make its own decisions. And that is in contrast to the serf, which was a creature tied to the land, right? Under feudal property. So this creature is free to move about the earth. But there are limitations to that, right? Those limitations are, of course, geometric and geographic. It's hard for you sitting there without the aid of technology to manipulate any events that go on anywhere else around the world. It is hard for you to manipulate things that happen on the moon. It's extremely hard for you to manipulate things that happen on Neptune. As the distance increase, time for your decision to even potentially have influence somewhere else increases, right? Time is a recurring problem. Your decisions as a child may impact your decisions now as an adult in ways that you can't control for at this point because those decisions were already made. They're locked in. We have the geometric problem, horizontal travel, right? Distance across the earth that you live on. And we have up and down, vertical limitations of how high you can go and how low you can go. And with technology, we can overcome them to a degree, but we still can't necessarily overcome all of them, right? An airplane can't go into space. The passengers would all die. If you're in a spaceship, even though you are now overcoming the immediate vertical problem, you are above the planet you are on, you are now trapped inside of the spaceship. You are not free to drift the universe alone. Likewise, if something's stuck at the top of a tree without the use of some piece of technology, you're going to have to climb that tree. That may be difficult or near impossible. And then we have components where the monad's free will is imposed upon by the state of the monad's body, right? If you're missing arms, if you're missing fingers, if you're missing legs, if you're missing internal organs, your experience as a monad is going to be different than somebody else's experience as a monad who may be missing different things or missing none of them, right? And finally, there is the psychic component, the mental component. Trauma, ideology, and mind you, when I say trauma, I mean mental trauma, what we tend to call as abuse and things like that, that may color your decision making. And there is physical trauma. If I hit you in the head, I'm going to cause some brain death. That brain death may impact your ability to make decisions or retain memory, which in a roundabout way reflects a problem in your decision making, right? So this monad is an extremely fragile creature. That free will does come at a cost, like it did under the religious notion. But instead of it being a moral cost, you're going to heaven or you're going to hell, you're going to pay the price for your actions when judged by Anubis, when judged by God, etc. You are paying all those costs up front because these are all the limits thereupon. If we take the notion of free will as a sphere of influence around the monad, which is what I tend towards, right?
Okay.
So far, so good?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, all of this stuff can occur without the monad having anybody else present. Without any other living thing, all of these things can occur. What happens if we introduce something else into the equation? We introduce yet another monad. Okay? So let's go ahead and draw that. That has an implicit effect on the monad, doesn't it? Because if we draw it a different way, here's your monad, here's its sphere of influence. Here's this monad, here's its sphere of influence. Those are not boobs. I'm going to add a little to them so they don't look like breasts, which I accidentally drew very crude breasts.
Oh no, they're gonna they know. We drew the Goomba already.
Yeah, right? But now we introduce the second monad, and now we need to think about how that impacts the first monad. Because if we take the libertarian notion at face value, those two monads don't have any impact beyond what they agree to, right? I think it's a safe assertion. Whatever they agree to impact-wise, or agree not to, disagree to, if you will, the negation of agreement, right? That impacts their relationship, and that's the only thing that does. There's no other way to impact each other. And is that actually the case? I'll pose that to you two first. Is that the case?
So the only thing about this is like, isn't a lot of this just missing the assumption, or just like assuming that they came out of nowhere? Because don't they all have to contend with,
what?
don't they all have to contend with like how they began to exist?
Birth.
Yeah.
Birth. Right there.
And
we have an imposed limitation, don't we? Because what if this monad spawns this monad? That familial relationship certainly does color their interactions, doesn't it? That's not contractual. Neither party actually agreed to that specific relationship, because at the time agreement could have occurred, that was crammed up in here, wasn't it? It was crammed right up on in there. You didn't know who that person was. You don't have a background with that person. You're literally creating them. Not out of nothing, but damn close to nothing.
You also have to like consider, like, okay, so like not only did they not come from nothing, but the implication that there's only one either implies they're the last or the first. And I don't know, if you want to get into like some really pedantic thing about like, what was it like for the first Homo sapien who like was born to our common ancestors, and does that like imply certain weird morals? I don't know, maybe it does, but like it's not like that Homo sapien knew. So I don't, we can't know that anyway, so I'm not even gonna fucking get into that. The point being here, any existence of one particular monad implies the existence of others.
Yes.
Unless they're literally the last.
Well, again, we're moving out of the, when we start doing this exercise, we move out of the realm of raw theory, right? And the libertarians admit that there are multiple monads operating independent of each other all over the face of the earth. Where is he? Let's see. Hold on, watch this. I can't, I'm live? Hold on, I'm live. Let me get you the invite. Yeah, so, you know, the libertarian is forced to admit that other people exist, whether they like to or not. The ones who believe they exist solely in the realm of pure fantasy, that nobody else exists, right? I think Arcana is going to join. We'll see if he catches that. Hold on. The libertarian knows. Oh, there he is. There's Arcana. Long time
Hello.
away.
How y'all doing, gentlemen? How y'all doing?
Not too bad. Holy shit, everybody is louder than me tonight.
He'll fix it.
Yeah,
We're all doing very well. It's good to hear from you again.
It's good to see you. Okay, so we're going over free will. Should I recap where we're at?
Yeah, just very briefly.
Excuse
we're
me.
talking about monads.
I'm asking the gentleman, the returning champ.
I would like for y'all to recap if y'all could, please.
Okay, now keep in mind, now you've got two doctors on the show, and we're going to be doubly obnoxious. So, strap the fuck in for your free college lesson, kiddies. Sure. So, the notion of free will starts in the religious sense, right? It's given by divinity, right? And the intent of that is to pose you a moral problem, right? How can you explain away sin, and how can you threaten people with punishment if they don't behave? Very simple. From that, the bourgeoisie extract free will and extrapolate it in a different manner. You are an individual subject, and this individual subject, this individual creature, has the ability to act as it desires in accordance with the rules of its creator, right? Which is intentionally a very vague statement. that subject has physical limitations and it has mental limitations as well as geometric limitations, right? The monad by itself, the individual human subject, can only travel so far horizontally and vertically of its own volition and can only influence things around it, right? Without the aid of technology, that sphere of influence is very, very low, and it does increase as we increase technology. But the laws of physics present a real problem. Chronologically speaking, free will is impacted by both the past self of the monad and decisions made before the past self of the monad, right? The whole of human history influences that monad, whether or not the monad agrees to it or not, right? Even the conception of the monad is dictated to the monad because somebody else thought of it already, right? The monad doesn't exist of its own volition. The monad exists in spite of its own volition, if you will. This subject could be defined differently, but it is not. And the monad, of course, is limited physically, depending on what organs it is missing and what limbs it is missing. And, of course, the monad is... If there are problems to the monad's brain, we have anything from psychic trauma, i.e. phobias, mental illness, to the consequences of physical brain death in whole or part, right? The subject can die. The subject can have parts of its brain die which color its decision-making. And then, of course, there's the overriding idea of ideology, right? The ideology that's coded into this brain is going to dictate what actions are possible. Okay?
So if I'm understand the conversation, the idea of freedom is linked to the action, right?
Well, that's how we've kind of determined it so far, what we're comfortable with, right? It's the agency of the monad. Not only the ability to decide on the monad's part, but the ability to act upon that decision in some meaningful way, with the acknowledgement that meaningful and arbitrary have not yet been properly defined in this discussion.
Yeah, the term monad, I think, we're referring to sort of a very broad swath of the ideology of individualism, just generally.
Yeah.
Brain in the jar theory kind of thing. Everybody is this, again, a monad,
an individual subject.
A pillar. That's another term I think that gets used for it as well.
I don't like
and
that.
What the implications of that on free will are.
Yes.
And if you have the stream pulled up, you might be able to see Dan's drawings that look a lot like a Goomba.
They don't look a lot like a Goomba. They're clearly not mushrooms. In fact, the problem was last week they looked like Dragon Quest slimes or Genshin Impact slimes, and I had to modify them again to avoid that problem.
Oh, but I like the slimes.
I know. But I gave him little feet this time.
Yeah, no, you're good. You're good.
Pretty high tech. I like it.
Yeah.
You're good.
So then...
So...
Oh.
Where we left off was, of course, the existence of one person or monad implies the existence of others.
Right. Well, that's the next hurdle. When we did last week's, we specifically stuck to only problems that afflict the monad as an individual. The next set of problems arises when you introduce a second monad into the thought experiment or the discussion, however you want to handle it. Right? Because what is going on with that secondary monad? Well, it has its own sphere of influence. Again, if I were to draw it, we could draw it like there's the monad, that little dot, there's that, and there's this monad and its little dot. And now we get into the libertarian theory, which is the monads will negotiate. They will agree or disagree on a subject, and they will act accordingly, and then otherwise they exist as an individual island. Without any other context, without anything else going on, whatever decision they corroborate on and decide to agree or not agree to is the influence that they both share, and it's equal, right? And as...
Sorry to interrupt here for a second.
Shoot.
Arcano, I don't think you realize you're walking into a dry theory cast.
He was fully appraised of how dry this was going to be.
Oh, he was? Oh, okay.
Yes.
Just making sure, because I didn't know if he knew.
Yeah, no, this is a very interesting conversation. I mean, the idea that the assumption of the centralized individual, right? You know, and I think it goes back to the works of man. I know I'm gonna butcher his name, but I think it's called Schuschnheimer, where he talks about the will,
Yeah.
right? And a will as it relates to desire, and so that the individual must navigate those two components and make sure that one doesn't overlap, right? Or one doesn't power because the will is in a sense seeking desire, right? The will to survive. What he talks about is the essential needs that you see yourself having to consume. However, those needs, in a society, you must navigate those desires to where you can fit in, and that will should not exceed or trample the will of another, right? And so for him, it's that thin line of navigating the idea of a will, of the idea of a free will, to where it still falls within that confine of a social contract, right? Using George Simmel's notion of contracts, and also what is it? The other one, Rousseau's. Right?
Yes.
The idea that although we have this assumption, this notion of the individual, right? We have to navigate the fact that we're part of a system, and so in order not to give into our complete desire, we developed, or we came into this covenant of a symbolic social contract, right? Is I like your car, I want your car, but I'm not going to kill you to get your car, right?
Right.
Right. Society, we agree that's a big no-no.
Well, we're not to society yet. We're not to something that complex.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's where.
So we're still in the embryo stages of the will. Okay, of free will. Okay. All right.
Yes, very much so. Sorry, my dragon pad decided to fuck off on me.
The hardest part about talking about this subject is that,
We're-
you have to, or
Yeah.
at least if you're framing it in the libertarians' terms, you start from a starting point that never existed and have to build from that. And I think that
Well-
is one of the things, because it becomes very tempting to talk about society almost immediately, or aspects of it.
Yeah, we need to start from the ground up, because they make an awful lot of presumptions that we are going to test as a part of this process.
I'll say this much. You do have to talk about these base level presumptions. The problem is that
It's hard.
libertarians don't move beyond them or make bad conclusions based on them.
Extremely.
And we're trying to move beyond that.
Yeah, well, before Chad, I will address that question, by the way. Before we, how do I put this? One of our biases, and we're always naked. We try to be as naked as possible at our biases. So one of the biases we're cognizant of, and this is certainly true for me. Which guest? Because the guest sounds very loud on my end. I will increase it. That could just be me. So thank you for the feedback there. One of my biases is I want to move beyond liberal thinking. Okay? I don't want to be trapped by libertarian or liberal thinking. We're going to move past that. We need a methodology to do that. So we first have to start picking apart their assumptions, seeing how much they hold up, and, if you will, picking and choosing what's good out of that, and separating that garbage out, and then recreating the rest. No small feat. And I think the rest of the Sons more or less agree with that. Everybody okay with that kind of a bias?
Yeah.
I certainly want to examine this.
Yeah. The other part is, of course, we are human too, and we can make mistakes. So interject as you will. Now, to address that, the question posed was, is this negotiation always agreed upon verbally? Don't get tied to the pedantics, because, of course, we can do verbally through the internet with increased technology. We can do in writing. There's lots of ways to come to that. But the point of the negotiation is the more important part for this purpose is the negotiation is agree or disagree. This is the course of action that will occur, and then the monads are separate again. This is the libertarian premise, right? They drift together, negotiate, drift away. Okay? That has a lot of implications. And we were talking about the fact that John raises the objection, how the fuck did they even get there? And the answer is one of the relations, right? There's a familial bond, a blood bond, right? That most humans take. I think if you polled the general person, and maybe don't put it in these terms, but they would probably argue that sacrosanct or at least important, right? So there's something to that relationship.
Yeah, excuse me.
Oh, you're good, man. Can you hear the guest better, by the way?
Can I hear the what?
They're saying you're too low, and it's like, maybe it's just my, hold on. Let me just try one of your phone.
He's talking to one of the chats.
Yeah, I'm also taking chats.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. We have a viewer who's very intimately familiar with Mexican politics in a way that I'm just not, so we should have a night where you just, you take over, my man. Because you pay a lot more attention than I do. But I digress there, right? I'll just deal with the volume. So let me make sure it's good on our end. Good. So we have a familial bond, right? Let's start with the most obvious problems when we're negotiating the monads, right? The most obvious problem is the existence of two of them now. They both have their own separate spheres of influence. And as they rove across the landscape, one can take action that the other is not cognizant of until it's too late to intervene in, right? Time again becomes our enemy. We repeat that same problem. They're now less, if they cooperate, which is the thing that could not be possible when there's only one subject. If they cooperate, they can overcome some limits to verticality and some limits to horizontal action. Some, but they are still present. It's just the barrier goes away, right? And that's because of their individual labor power. Okay. But they can also influence the situation that is the earth in ways that the other cannot necessarily stop. They may not know about it, or they may be powerless to intervene. Again, if one of those monads is missing limbs or has mental trauma, right, that can color their decision-making or make it impossible for them to take a course of action that would benefit them at the cost of the other monad or in cooperation with the other monad. Right? We introduce the concept of utility. This is where utilitarianism starts, whether or not the utilitarians would even admit it. But it is the usefulness of other people to you. So now when we're interacting with these other monads, we are rating each other. In the libertarian world, we are rating each other on our perspective utility. What's the utility of taking the chats? What's the utility of having a guest on? What's the utility of building the show? What's the utility of the show members and the guest and the chats interacting with me? What do I offer?
So when you say utility,
Use.
Yeah, so like, is that just like, at least on this, if we're talking about like cavemen or whatever, are we talking about like their ability to help you like find food, basically?
Could be.
I mean, is that the most base level of this? Because utility has to be measured against something, and it's not just.
It's against value perceived in real.
Yeah.
So food, right? I mean, that has to
be
be the base thing.
I mean,
right?
it could be food, but it's just anything that would have any form of value.
It could be, art, conversation, night watch,
labor
food.
In particular.
Yeah, all these things that are expressed through labor, right? Fucking. Hard to fuck another person without another person to fuck. That's an impressive feat if you can fuck another person without another person to fuck. That's utility.
Yeah, I mean, the main thing is just that you have to start from like what was. Well, I don't know. I always find, at least from what we were talking about in group chat, like what the first source of all of these impulses might have been, and it was probably food, right? And that would be the thing that it was that people started measuring this against.
Could be.
Though
I
say this much.
Go ahead.
The thing I was going to say is there is like anthropological evidence of when we first started taking care of disabled people, and that goes very, very far back.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, I mean, that's really that's like dawn of civilization stuff. That's like
Mhm.
right there with like, like right after fire and the bows and like tents, we started taking care of disabled people. So, our ability to measure use was probably nuanced from the get-go, I guess. Maybe it wasn't just food. I don't know. What does everyone think?
Go ahead,
I
Arcana.
think okay.
Then you, Gangsta. Go ahead, because Arcana was. Go ahead, man.
Cool.
You.
Oh, so yeah, no, yeah, you're absolutely. I think it was right, the anthropologist. I think it might have been Douglas, right, and I think it originated from that question that was asked of her, um, is what is your interpretation of civilization, right? And it wasn't something like insightful as so like poet, kind of poetry or anything like that. Is that it went back to the idea when they were excavating and they found the mandibular of someone who was missing certain key um, um, teeth, and so what they interpreted is that that person, right, because if this idea of the survival of the fittest was actually must have been dependent on someone else, right? And so and for her that was the essence of civilization. If we were to find a utility that is measurable, and I know the conversation just recently transitioned into labor power, right?
Mm-hmm.
What we can take away from this idea of labor power is the value, right? That the labor, the power behind the labor has a specific value. It's not the intensity of the work; it is what is valuable, right? But that value, and this is why this conversation about Moad as this essence is kind of difficult because this notion of labor power changes within the I know we want to kind of hold on the conversation society, but it changes within the social structure, right? Like, for example, the value of a physician in the 19th century
See?
is not in par with the value of a veterinarian, right, of that point in time. Um,
Yeah.
and
Well,
that's because
you know
that
what?
is because of their labor power at that specific junction. Um, and and one more thing is that the component that is always measured against utility is this idea of leisure, right? And that's how you can tell the power within a dynamic is who benefits from leisure.
And we're. You guys want to run so far down the racetrack. We're really at the, you know. I would say two people don't make a civilization make. Go ahead, Gangsta.
No,
Oh,
no.
It started
what
off with
what was
Adam and
it?
Eve. It started off with
What was your original question, Henry?
Oh, well, my original question was more just I guess more
We're real
general
naming
about
everybody tonight. All right, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. It was yeah, you said something about food.
no,
It's
just
food.
like where do we think that
Uh,
the measurements of value began? Like when the first Homo sapien like actually like was able to assess value in other people. But
Yeah, I wouldn't argue it would be necessarily food. It would be something like more abstract. Because like the original economies were your basically your primitive communism or gift economy. So I imagine it would have been the um the barter, like the actual like there would be some sort of abstract unit of barter. Maybe
okay.
I mean food would just be the facilitating resource. Just like gold would or water or like you can't really pick out which would be the first thing that they would do, but you can kind of pick out that like they would probably have bartered for it, even if it was sex.
it's some kind of exchange, and
Yeah.
most importantly,
We're talking about feudal systems.
no, we're still back at we're still back at the introduction
We're
of one
pre-feudal.
monad to the other.
Yeah.
We're still
We're-
at two, so you have to think like really. I hate to phrase it this way, but limit your thought to the interactions between just two dullards hanging out in the woods, like just two.
Oh, simple. The ability to
Simple.
hunt, man.
Yeah.
That is it, right?
know,
But
that's-
It's just the utility is the ability. It's the ability to
Well, it's
to
not- it's
to
not-
have the strength, right?
But even in
If,
a hunt, you have to have tools. You have to have communication.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that go into it. That's why, like, this game of, like, what was first, I don't think it matters. I honestly don't think that really matters.
Exactly.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I don't mean to imply it matters. I just find it interesting.
Yeah, I mean, that's something we can piss around with towards the end, but, like, like, all these things are interconnected. If you're hunting, that means you have some sort of tool to hunt, even if it's just the rock, right? The simple rock. It means you're spotting animals. And as a process of hunting, you can note that their fur, it doesn't take long to figure out that their fur is better than your furlessness, right? So the utility of the animal is the food and the fur, right? So the utility may not actually be, to one person, the ability to capture the food so much as the ability to extract the fur in a usable way that I can cover myself and protect myself from the elements. So it could be the clothing. It could be the bones of the animal, which I can use to make simple tools, right? It could be the fact that these bones were there. I can use those to extract wood, which I have seen burn thanks to lightning strikes or other causes, and it keeps fire going, right? There's all sorts of things it could have been. It could just be talking. It could be some sort of communication, not like we're talking now, but some sort of communication to show that there's another thing in the world like you.
Fighting
Right.
for the liver, the status item of the animal.
Yeah, it could be the negotiation over the trophy skull. It could be anything. It doesn't really matter. But the point is, we start entering into negotiations, right? As we think of them as these negotiations, and I guarantee they saw it differently because they're not tainted like we are by the liberal thought, right? They're not tainted.
Lucky them.
Lucky them. Hundreds of just literally. What, 200 plus thousand years before liberalism could rear its ugly head and paint everything eternally, we have to extrapolate backwards as liberal subjects to figure out what the fuck's going on. So the way they calculate utility or value is not something that's expressed in the terms we use, but it's something that they valued enough that they kept going. It might have even just be petty species survival. If I keep somebody who is differently able than me alive, they add something, and that's good enough. Doesn't have to be their labor power necessarily. It can be them.
But ultimately, you need another monad just to exist in the first place in the form of parents.
Right. So that's why I say the first bond is the familial bond, isn't it? That's the first.
Right.
And it goes beyond negotiation. So negotiation isn't the premise to existence, is it? Now you can say, well, two people negotiated to make them, and then, they existed, you go back this little chain, right? They didn't number one, they didn't necessarily negotiate.
No, that's Animal Kingdom.
Right. It could be very much Animal Kingdom shit, brutality. It doesn't have to be a negotiation to arrive there. It can be a contest of wills, a contest of two free wills, which exactly spites the notion of negotiation, right? It is the antithesis of negotiation. Force-based negotiation, if you will. So you don't have to be spawned out of any kind of blessed negotiation. You can be spawned by quite awful brutality. And yet, your existence is still, for you to be, that some kind of act has to occur that forces your creation, right? And that act of gestating in the womb is the first time you ever experience the need for another person. The first time the monad is violated as the monad subject, right? So the monad may not even be the proper name for this creature. It is certainly an ideological name. It's an ideological subject, but the ideology doesn't even hold up because the creature gestates in the womb of another creature like it. Doesn't have to be the same species. Obviously, at some point we cross that Sorite's paradox from not a modern human to modern human. And at some point, somebody was born, and they were born not of, proto-modernity. They were born into, like the tribal systems. They were born into the Roman system. They were born into feudalism. They were born into capitalism. And for some, they were born into political communism. right? They were all born of subjects who came from something else, like them but not them, like them but something similar, right? So there's a transformative process. But that is the first bond. You gestate inside another, and you are nurtured by that other. Maybe not to your liking, but that creature keeps you alive long enough for you to evolve into the monad under liberalism, right? So that's the first negotiation. Their sphere of influence is extended unto you until you can break free, right? So it's actually more of a Venn diagram in this situation. You start here, then you go here, and then finally you break free of it. You transition from your dependence into independence. And we still mimic that unintentionally or intentionally, I don't know. It depends on who you ask. In modern society, right? We rear our children, then we send them off into the world to be their own adults. That may have arrived sooner in the past. You may have to grow up fucking quick, but that's still a process that has been maintained throughout human history, right? You didn't just, in pre-modernity 200,000 years ago, you didn't just shit out your kid, leave it on a rock, and say, good luck. Hope you live long enough to walk. Better learn to feed yourself quick, kid. We didn't do that. We've always carried that on. And that, again, is the familial bond, that relationship. But that comes with its own pressures, right? Because there is a mutual expectation that we have now, and certainly have always had, that you have a responsibility to those elders. Those who came before you, you have a responsibility to them. And there's that ugly word that individualists and libertarians hate. Even if they can use it and chant it at other people like a weapon, this is the thing they ultimately fear the most. They fear responsibility. Which is another place their whole theory starts falling apart when you are forced to be responsible. That's a status they can't handle. But let's move on, right? Let's move away from the two monads linked in that particular familial relationship. Are there other familiar relationships that have different sets of influences?
Are there different, what sorts of relationships?
Different familial relationships with confer different impositions.
Yeah, I mean, like
on
uncles
spheres
and
of
cousins,
influence.
I guess.
Uncles and cousins, so extended relatives?
Yeah.
Is there a more obvious one we could jump to?
Right.
Brothers and sisters?
There's brothers and sisters, right? You're rivaling over resources as handed down by the parents.
Tribe.
The tribe. How about who you're fucking? It would seem if you know or reasonably know you knocked up that monad, it would seem that you have a responsibility to feed them while they're in a state where it may not be possible for them to feed themselves. You might have to bring them food.
Draw the pregnant minion.
Draw the pregnant minion. Jesus. Okay.
They look like minions.
This ought to be good.
This. There's a little foot walking. There's the eyes. And there's the arms holding the belly. Okay. That's the best I can do. Right? You might have to provide food for them. You entered into what they would call a negotiation, and yet again, you landed that filthy word responsibility because you've created a dependency in that exchange. Pregnant minion. All right, I'm heading out. If you got to head out. But yeah, we're going to keep going here. So anywho, right?
There's a beautiful pregnant minion.
Thank you. I'm getting rid of it. But I mean, honestly, you have created a dependency in that scenario because now that person is dependent on you to feed them in exchange for them producing your offspring. And that's, we talked about the womb gestation and the offspring as an imposition of free will, right? The sphere of influence extends and goes out. What about that creature which sires it, right? Not which spawns it, but which sires it. If we take the role of obligation or responsibility, seems like they passed the fuck out, haven't they? That's it. Fuck it. I gave, One way of looking at it is I shot my load, you're pregnant, I fed you, now the baby's born, you're done here. Now you have to take responsibility for it. I don't have to. Right? And look again, we just arrived at that right-wing interpretation of the right to life. We just arrived at that primitive notion, which I don't want to, actually, it's unfair to say it's primitive because primitive human beings felt the obligation, right? They felt the obligation to rear those young and feed their partner. Just as
we really can't say much. We got prom night dumpster babies these days.
Yes. But there it is, isn't it? We've accidentally arrived at their notion of free will. I shot my load. I fed the thing. You came out of the womb. I'm done here. Good fucking luck. How do you like them apples? I like that shit.
Yeah, I don't think that's free will, man.
Isn't it? How is that
No,
not, how is it not free will?
You can easily shoot your load with using lefty or righty, dude. Like, now, what you know, and
Is it not?
you know,
Let me ask you this: Are you raising an objection because of the quality or because of the actuality? Because on the actuality, I disagree, and on quality of exercise of free will, I agree.
so if we're looking at this idea, right? So we're controlling for the social contract. If it's just desire, the desire is just the
desire to sire.
the sole desire, right, is to relieve, and therefore it doesn't matter if there's if there's someone there or not. It's if you have a desire, right, and it's your free will to relieve yourself, that is your desire. Right. That the desire itself in its basic animalistic form has been accomplished. Right. So by that definition, you have met that free will.
Right.
Now, if you want to raise a child and caring for that is no longer free will. Now you engage in that, and yet we haven't gotten to that point. But you already engage in a contract, right?
Is it not
so
free
this
will?
this is kind of going back to Mead, in the essence of self. Right, when he makes that distinction between the I and the me, the id and the superego and the ego, right? That later Sigmund Freud took from him. But the I is that individualistic, natural tendency, and the me is more of the social composure of the rituals that you have to do within the structure, right? And so even if you want to leave a person, you won't, because there might be repercussions and X and Y. That is all the social contract. And he also makes that distinction between wooing a person than forcing yourself on a person, right? Because if we were to look at just a pure desire and the gratification, it shouldn't matter the technique as long as you reach that point of climax.
Well,
however,
hold on. Let's address that. Let's address that, because right now we're talking about between the two monads. If one of them wants to force their will upon the other, one of them has exercised free will, but the other one may not, correct? In wooing or the alternative, right? In one of those, the agreement is reached. The other one, the agreement is not reached, yet the act still occurs. So the exercise of free will by one subject can be necessarily to the detriment of the other or against the will of the other, right? That's part one. Lot to fucking unpack there. If we have a crude interpretation of free will, there's a problem. There's a problem with free will because that sphere of influence can be violated, right? We keep arriving at these violations of free will as we normally think of it. And even as we think of it was within the sphere of influence, there are plenty of ways to continue violating it, right? Because the agency is violated. That the ability to decide and the ability to act have been impeded by force. Right? If I steal your food, if I steal something from you, if I force myself upon you.
So, I mean, wouldn't the thing that really imposes on this here, and I hate making this point because I think naturalistic arguments tend to just be like terrible for the most part, but wouldn't a libertarian at this point say like, yeah, all of these problems that you keep running into with free will are sublimated by the fact that that we have like some sort of internal natural psychology that's like in our survival instincts. So like all of these conflicts about free will
the
are
liberal
solved by our nature or something like that.
That's correct. The
I mean, that's what
monad-
they'd say.
Hold on, chat real quick. Yes, the monad can choose to stick around and raise the newborn. That's correct. That is an exercise of that monad's free will in relation to the other monad. Even, keep in mind, even if they're not wanted, the ability to impose, you may not be wanted in that, but you can still try to do so. Now, with you, if you're saying, wouldn't the libertarian make a contradictory statement? The answer is yes.
Yeah, I mean,
it's
the problem with
self-contradiction.
talking about,
We're trying to eliminate those contradictions, though. So, thank you for raising the point. But the counter I'm going to use is simply yes. They would say something contradictory and then try to hold the two paradoxes, and that is the insanity we live under. So we're going to blow past that objection, because if we end there, this was a fucking pointless exercise. Just like libertarianism is a fucking pointless exercise.
Yeah, I mean the main thing is that I mean, well,
yeah.
The main thing that I would say is like, you talk about like, why wouldn't they just abandon the kid? Okay. Well, the libertarian would say it's not natural for us to abandon the kid. You have tons of instincts that make you not want to abandon the kid. And the thing about libertarianism that is convenient is that they do really get to skip to the part where there's civilization without examining like how stupid their ideology is.
Right.
Two people.
I had to do this last time too. Stop trying to jump the gun. We're analyzing the relationships between two people. Stick to two people. We're going to broaden it out. Just wait. I have been on my breaks and lunches at my day job, absolutely charting out all sorts of wonderful diagrams that make you scream. I will give you the opportunity to scream. Stop trying to rush it, because the libertarian is going to try to rush it precisely because they are operating on a contradictory and flawed set of premises. They're not very smart, and that's because they know if they're smarter, they can't be libertarians anymore, because they're going to run into the word they hate the most, which is responsibility. Because all they're doing, all their entire worldview is, and I just proved it a moment ago, in the context of woo versus anti-woo, right? I don't really want to say the R word yet again. But in that context, in a free will is as defined by the libertarians, one monad can impose their will. Whether or not the libertarian likes that outcome and whatever fucking stupid contradictory bullshit they add, it falls a fucking part because you simply can't take action. It doesn't have to be good action, right? They have to live in a world where everybody's just going to act fucking nice and moral. They have to live in a fantasy land. Whether they like it or not, all their bullshit is premised on the same religious fantasy that any other religious person is. The difference is any other religious person recognizes that their fantasy has strings attached, severe consequences. So they acknowledge the problem. They are smarter by default. This is just a dumb religion to justify jacking off in your basement and playing stocks all day to the detriment of the rest of humanity. It is a selfish and immature ideology. We are going to break past it. And mind you, I'm going to be real bold here. When I say libertarian, I'm referring to what would be self-described as a conservative, as a liberal Democrat, as a Republican, as a paleoconservative, as an anarchist. Anybody whose end goal is to jack themselves off for their own ethical gain and their own moral piousness has the same fucking stupid delusion. The real religious people have the decency to recognize that their fantasy comes with costs. And that in their fantasy world, they're going to have to fucking make sure that they're acting right because the downside is so omnipresent and terrible. In the fantasy world of the fucking libertarian, everybody is such a goddamn dullard that they couldn't act the way that their ideology permits you to act. Meaning the ones who do act that way are inherently superior. We accidentally arrive at the reason for supremacist arguments, identitarian supremacy. My group is better than yours because we were smart enough to break our own dumb baby rules. All right, can we move past the dumb contradictions of liberalism? Everybody cool with that?
Yeah, I don't know why you brought up libertarians. No one cares what they think.
Well, because this is where this comes from. This is where this bullshit on free will that we all think comes from. Chat, you okay? That was a lot. That was a lot. Now, on the drives of the eye, right, we're not necessarily talking about the psychological drives behind the creature. We're talking about the material conditions of the creature and how it reacts to them with its sphere of influence. If they have the will of desire, which I think was Schopenhauer, who predates Nietzsche. Thank you. I have a few of those once in a while. If we go back to Schopenhauer and the will of desire and all the predecessors to Freud and Nietzsche, right? If we go back to that, it's essentially a will of wants, a will of treats, a will of hedonism, which is insufficient. Nietzsche's will to power or will to act, the will to do, right? The will to make. When he says what is it? Der Wille zur Macht. Nietzsche often conflates the will to power and the will to action because he sees power reflected in action and sees action as an expression of one's power. Okay? If we move on to that for a second, the will to power is actually separate from free will because Nietzsche would freely, most likely admit that you can just stomp the hell all over on free will, especially if you're doing, in his mind, what is best for humanity, which is overcoming the limitations of our humanity to become the beyond man, the overman, the uberman, right? He expressly says so. Say yes to life, assert yourself. That's the positivity in Nietzsche. The negativity in Nietzsche is to assert yourself. You can also do a hell of a lot of killing and raping, can't you? I had to say it. I had to break the
I thought
goddamn...
you were going to say Nazi shit.
You have to do a hell of a lot of Nazi shit. Or you can, it's in your wheelhouse. That's also saying yes to life. That, two sides of the same coin, it is asserting the will over others. It is a domination in either scenario. One of them is just probably a hell of a lot kinder. And the hedonistic will, which predates Nietzsche and where he built his ideas, is also one that is certainly mired in cruelty. The religious, at least, again, the religious, as much as everybody loves to shit on them, the religious understand that that imposition of will has a huge cost to the other person, and there ought to, if there aren't direct consequences, there sure as fuck ought to be, if you're going to act badly, right? The conceptions of hell, punishment, Anubis judging you and sending you into some fucking nasty deep part of space where space worms rip at you, or whatever the fuck Egyptian afterlife is. The Greek underworld where it's just nothing but shit and dredge and torments. They understand that within their conception of their societies, there had to be a cost. There had to be hell to pay, quite literally, if you do not fucking act right. Libertarians went, that shit ain't for me, dog. I want to act as reckless and irresponsible as I can and go for it. Now, Arcano, I believe you had more objections. Go ahead.
I'm not saying anything. Like,
no, he just had so many points loaded up after another. I needed to address them. You know, we needed to. And then, of course, you know, John has his objection. What the libertarians say, some contradictory bullshit. Yeah, of course. That's literally all they can do. They have to justify their own bad behavior with their ideology, right? Which you can say, you can argue ideology is just always about justifying your own dumb bullshit. Okay, so anyway, back to those familiar relationships.
Wait, so you know, yeah. So I'm curious to know if, so in this scenario, libertarians would be the person enforcing the will on the vulnerable one, right?
If they can. Yeah. Rapists. It's an ideology for rapists.
And there's no other use.
There really isn't another use for it. If you want to justify theft, you're a libertarian. If you want to justify rape, you're a libertarian. If you want to justify murder, you have to be a libertarian. Because you have to assume it's okay to impose your will on others, even if you dress it up as, well, you ought to not do that. Yeah, it's cute. You ought not to. What's the consequence of it? The religious tell you there's severe consequences for it. You're a rapist, enjoy being raped in hell. If you're, which is carried over in the liberal idea of, oh, they'll just get raped in prison, right? You'll just get raped in hell. If you're a murderer, get ready to be forced to die and be resurrected in the most painful ways possible in hell. If you're a thief, prepare to have your literal organs and your ability to use them stolen from you and then given back to you only to be stolen again, such that you always have a taste of them but never have the full usage, such that your simple faculties, and watch everything you ever had dissolve into dust over and over again for all eternity for those painful actions. For a libertarian, it's like, well, you shouldn't be bad. Oh, you shouldn't be bad? Oh, wow. Ooh, high ethics there. Wow.
Well, I mean, that's how they very
kindergarten
quickly arrive at how the only structure of society should be the policing one, right?
Well, that's how they justify turning everything into a police state to protect their property, right? The unethical use of force in their own definition. When a libertarian says something's bad, what they're saying is it's bad for me and it's good for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. That's it.
So we're still at those familial impositions. We're still at the point of siring, right? And the monad can opt to stick around and raise the child. The monad doesn't have to. Right? They can just abandon the newborn. They can abandon the pregnant mother. Whatever. They can just abandon them. Just fucking can. It's not good, but we're not talking good and evil here. We're just talking about what is in your option wheelhouse, right? And what overrides that problem is we'll get to society. And all the various ideologies that fucking try to resolve those problems that are very easily recognized even by proto-humans. Proto-modern humans, excuse me. That's the proper term, right? Pre-modern human. All of them can recognize. Animals can recognize these problems. Then there's what to do, of course, with the elderly, right? Your elderly parents. As you age, these relationships shift, right? Now, you're the one who can hunt. The older one may not be able to hunt. They still provide utility. You tend to try to keep them alive. What is our next problem, right? What's the next kind of relationship we could have between these two monads? Avoiding familiar relationships.
The other, broadly construed.
The other.
So someone.
We're already there. Define it.
I mean, yeah, not broadly construed.
Go a little bit tighter. Tighten it up a little bit.
Someone you encounter in the wilderness that you don't recognize.
New.
Oh.
The new. Right? That provides a whole set of interactions. The new person. Somebody new. Somebody I'm not familiar with in my little bumping around the world. Right? How can those turn out? Anybody?
Well, I mean...
You can opt to ignore them, right? You can have a neutral reaction. You can ignore them.
You can try to trade with them, but that implies, a lot of other things.
You can ignore them or you can engage them. That's the first step, right? You can acknowledge that there is another, or you can ignore the fact there is another. Right? We can say that?
Yeah.
Okay. We'll opt for engagement because ignoring them is easy, right? If everybody ignores each other, we're done here. What if one of them? No, let's just address.
Violence. Is that where you're going?
It could be violent, couldn't it? It could have a negative reaction. There could be violence that occurs, especially in situations where one monad has more information than the other, i.e., they see the other person first. The option of violence is certainly stronger in that, right? Because the other person's unprepared to receive violence. A lot harder to fight a guy who knows you're going to hit him. A lot harder to stab a guy who knows you're going to hit him. A lot harder to hit a guy who knows to move from your bow and arrow. Or at least try to move. It becomes a lot more difficult to enact violence. So violence becomes more of an option if knowledge is asymmetrical, right? Anything revolutionary, Anna? Anybody want to contest it?
No.
Sounds good to me.
Sounds good? Okay. But violence is a possible option. So is ignoring the other person. You don't actually have to acknowledge them, especially, again, in an information asymmetry. You never have to present yourself to that other person. You can simply leave, right? You can opt to reject the opportunity to negotiate. The other person, notably, has no decision-making then. They have no option to engage in something they don't know about. So we run into those geometric problems again. If your senses haven't detected it, right? You run into this physical problem. Your senses haven't detected it. You haven't visually detected it, or the distance is so great that the other person can just simply be ignored, right? If I started ranting at chat, wherever chat's at, but I can't see chat can't hear me, I can rant to my fucking walls all I want, but it won't matter. Chat will never hear it. They'll be totally ignorant of it. They will have not made the decision to back away or engage with the rant that has occurred. They'll never know. Likewise, somebody could view that hostility towards libertarians as a personal attack on them because they are a libertarian and a monster of a person. Right? They could view that as violence. There's a power asymmetry because I don't have to read a libertarian's comments unless it's funny because they're so dumb. I'm not required to do so. But let's move on. Let's say for the sake of argument they engage each other, right? They acknowledge each other, they engage each other. What can happen?
In an engagement?
Yeah, an engagement.
They can trade food or tools or whatever.
Exchange of language.
They can engage in exchange of language. They can engage in exchange of physical goods of some sort. They could fuck, couldn't they? We could start fucking right there.
Labor.
They could overcome a natural problem, couldn't they? If something's obstructing them. They could begin hunting together. They could begin cooperating in their endeavors. Most likely that's going to be a secondary option. But if we have the imposition of emergency, right, an event outside of the two monads that has now imposed upon the two monads, they can choose to cooperate to survive the emergency.
Chariot slave.
Well, there is that too, couldn't they? Again, especially with any kind of asymmetry in information or asymmetry in physical power, you could take somebody hostage, couldn't you? You could enact a different kind of violence. You don't have to kill them. You don't have to beat them. You can just take them.
Ooh, indoctrination.
You can attempt indoctrination. That's usually a pattern of occurrence over time, though.
Yeah, I guess.
But that's a different kind of negotiation between two knowns, isn't it? Two known entities. So the idea of the new, or the idea of the familial bond, the intimate, if you want, we have within the notion of society itself. And this is going to be stretching a dangerous line because I know where you guys want to take this, right? What about 90 people? But within the notion of society itself, each individual monad can engage in certain actions within the context of that society, can they not? So what's the relationship?
Can you repeat that?
Sure. Within the context of a society, any two individuals can interact with each other in different ways because they both serve different functions within the society, presumably. Even if they have the exact same job, they have different families, they're different things, right?
But we're not quite at
We're not at 90 people yet. We're not at 5,000 people. We're not at 1 billion people. No. But we're at 2 people within the context, within the framework of a society, right?
Okay, yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but that kind of structure is very unstable because there the individual has power, right? So if one decides to walk away, that interaction is already dissolves.
Right.
So it requires a lot of negotiation.
Free will is violated before one party has a chance to even begin to formulate or exercise their free will.
Well, even in that structure, you get a sense of who has the dominant position in any interaction, right? So even if the individual is subordinate in that dynamic of a dyad, there is still a requirement to negotiate. So even a position in subordination, that person still has some power and thus some will, because you're at a very basic level of a group dynamic.
Right, you're at the interactions within the group context between two. It is unstable, isn't it? Because that doesn't have other features, right? It itself is weaker because it is new or a mundane transaction. which is just for our purposes arbitrary, right? Or it by itself is a small decision. It may have within the context of decision making, we did talk about this last time too. That individual pairing may make a very small decision, but when multiplied, it suddenly has a lot of power, right? If we extend that decision making out to the next set of decisions, it could have a lot, but it by itself doesn't do much.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, we know there can be the economic, that's the trade, or the sharing of labor power, production or consumption. There can be the political negotiation of power, force over a subordinate. Spicy take unless you live in a void. Every action is an interaction with another. I know. I went super spicy with that one, especially after that last rant. I'm just dropping those hot bombs everywhere. We have the social or the cultural, right, which includes the familial, but is it slightly different? You know, our cultural interactions within our framework are different than our familial interactions, despite the fact they're actually all taking very in a close sense, right? When we socialize, that's an intimate setting. There's just a few of us. But they're not our familiar relations. But they all have their own cultural taboos and traditions within them. Our social conventions, right? And again, we always see the frailty. We keep repeating the frailty. Decisions that were made before inform the decisions of now. Decisions are limited by the laws of physics. We'll shorthand geometric and geographic. The laws of physics provide limitations. And now we have a new one, asymmetry, where things are asymmetrical. Information is held by one party over the other. Physical capability is held by one party over the other. So free will can be imposed upon by even more things. The more complex the situation gets, there's more impositions to free will. But there can also be, by the same token, doubling of labor power doubles what we tend to call productivity, right? We can do more because there's two of us. We can achieve more, which is something we couldn't do alone. So our free will on one end is deducted with asymmetry, but it is also enhanced by the introduction of the other, right? Simply put, I can only jack off by myself, but with another person, I can fuck. That's a huge jump.
Exponential, potentially.
Exponential, potentially, yes. Now, here's the real question. It's 11:26. I'm willing to go to midnight because I'm insane and I hate myself. First,
We hate you too.
I can keep going.
Okay, does anybody want to drop right now?
I'm gonna drop.
Okay, I know it's a lot. Again, you're taking in a lot of high-level ideas here, like libertarians are dullards, and
Yeah, that's so high.
I know. I want to point
So
this
hard
out.
to conceptualize.
I do want to point out one little thing. Liberals tend to be obsessed with either intelligence being sacrosanct or intelligence being non-existent, and that's because, generally speaking, by their own standards, they either think way too highly of themselves, or they know they would fail their own test, so they kind of have to throw it out of the water. Right? Intelligence.
And then they use intelligence to say, "Hey, we're better than black people."
Yes. Again, undue sense of superiority. Intelligence is best understood as a rating of the ideology, your background radiation, the ideology that you choose to subscribe to. That's a better way to measure intelligence. If you're a libertarian, it's very, very low. Prima facie evidence, listen to them. Listen to them talk about free will. See if they can even begin to comprehend the idea of just one person or two people despite their over-reliance on the topic. Fucking going cuckoo bonkers.
That would have required talking to libertarians, and I don't want to do that.
Well, you can see videos of them talking about it. You notice they always jump to society and what society owes the individual. There's no talk of the counter exchange.
No, I mean their main contradiction is again it's between the tension between free will and like what they would argue is natural, and I don't know. I mean,
I disagree
like,
slightly.
I mean the main
So
well, because the thing is, like, you say you contradict yourself if they start talking, they would contradict themselves if they start talking about a thing being natural, like abandoning or not abandoning a child, right? So they would say it's not natural for you to abandon a child. So our instincts like impose upon our free will somewhat, or something along those lines. And the thing that I find interesting about it is like they can't really resolve that tension because a lot of them don't. Well, they don't have like a strong grasp on science. A lot of them, like, despite the fact that like
Even
many
the
of the
ones who
ones were
do.
like, well,
Or
yeah, I mean,
logic.
many of them are ardent atheists, and we'll talk about how important science is on some level. But
Ew,
the ones
really?
who,
It's
well,
embarrassing.
the ones
That's
who
not
talk the
really
most about
embarrassing.
nature
I'm
Yeah.
embarrassed for
are,
the atheists.
yeah.
It's
Well,
not.
I
It's
mean,
not though.
let's look
They're
at
atheists who have an over reliance on a religious concept and have constructed a new religion to compensate. They're just dumb. They don't even understand the words they're using to describe themselves. Scientism. Thank you. That is the word I'm looking for. Chat. Ding, ding, ding wins. They have
Yeah,
their own
it
religion.
is.
They're too stupid to know the word for their belief set. Again, they're
That's
dumb.
hilarious.
They're dullards.
Well,
Libertarian
the
ideology rots the brain. Now, how many
the
factories
thing that's
We
supposed to-
are
know, we
at?
know. I mean, I get you, like,
I
Bastion. We know.
yes, you know, but chat might not, and I need to
You're
insult
right.
libertarians. It's a
So
compulsion. I have a mental disorder.
the thing that
Fuck the libertarians.
Fuck them. Yeah, it's like Tourette's, but fuck libertarians.
the synthesis of all of this is supposed to be something along the lines of Jordan Peterson, right? Because he is supposed to
Peterson's
synthesize.
not a libertarian. Peterson's problems
Well,
are different. Peterson has
Crowder, maybe?
well, Peterson has an innate sense of right and wrong, and he has an innate sense of the idea of expectation and responsibility, obligation to the other and obligation from the other.
but like, isn't all that just rooted in like evolutionary psychology stuff that he can't really claim to know because that's not a science? Because that's what it comes down to, is that in order to really be a libertarian and justify any of this, you
He's not-
have to engage with evolutionary psychology.
He doesn't advertise. He doesn't want you to be a libertarian, though. Don't misinterpret his motive.
That is true. He does
Peter-
not want you. He wants you to just be a theocrat, but like
Rand.
for
Peter-
atheist
yeah.
reasons.
Ayn Rand.
Well, I don't even know it's atheistic reasons. Peterson's a pretty devout Christian by the metrics of Western Christianity, at least.
Isn't Rand the
He-
origin
he
of
bel-
libertarianism?
Randy,
He comes-
objectivism is, yes.
Yeah. Well, he
Whoa, that's a bag of
isn't
stupid.
he isn't a Christian because he doesn't like. I believe, this is my understanding, he doesn't literally believe in God, but he believes in everything. Like, he believes in all of the conclusions about how society should be organized that like pre-Vatican II people believe, basically.
Yeah,
And he says that that science justifies all of those mechanics of how that society would organize, but not necessarily the belief in the specific thing.
yeah, he's not a Nietzschean
Which is,
Christian,
its form and
but he's a
function is
Christian
the same
atheist.
fucking thing.
Right. But again, like the critical difference for this purpose is libertarians have to constantly be running away from responsibility and all the contradictions that come with that. Peterson does not. Now, again, I'm not saying like Peterson's fucking brilliant, and we can absolutely rip through his ideas on another time. He has some useful ideas like clean your fucking room, but he has very bad ideas like ignore the political. And just accept it. Ignore the political as an idea born directly out of fascism. If you're not the political actor, fuck it, don't worry about it. Let the state do what it's going to do. That Jungian stuff with the archetypes and whatnot, he deals with responsibility. I think you're correct. As far as an analysis of Jungian psychology, you're hard-pressed to find a better speaker. If you limit yourself to that content from Jordan Peterson chat, you would be hard-pressed to imagine how awful the rest of his ideas are, because he's very, very talented in that. And I will not rob the man of what he's actually good at. And I will not defame him by comparing him to libertarians who are open dullards. His politics just suck that bad. He really accepts a lot of fascist premises through neoliberal and conservative brain poisoning. Yeah, but if you were like, well, I like Jordan's stuff on Jung, you'd be surprised to find out so do I. I like listening to him talk about Jung, even when it comes off as silly. it's good. It's not really a point of argumentation for me. I don't like it when people attack his union work. I love it when they attack his political opinions because God, again, they suck. The guy's an asshole. But and he on top of that, he's dumb because he's a very childish sense of conservatism. Right? He doesn't even he is definitely the target of fascist propaganda. He's not a proponent. That's where a lot of people get confused with Peterson. His political opinions are the runoff of fascism. They're nowhere near as elegant, no matter how horrific fascism is. Like communism, which I don't find horrific, it has its own elegance to it because it is thought out. It is post-liberal. It's just mortifying as to what they actually do to enact it, right? The actual real-world consequences. But as a piece of study, I do find it fascinating to find out what they extracted from post-liberalism and interpret it. He is the runoff of their propaganda. And it shows he's a dick.
The shitwater, if you will.
Yeah, he's just shitwater. But yeah, if you got to go. Arcana, are you hanging around?
Yes, I'm here.
Are you going for the long haul? Because we're going to start taking...
I didn't realize my mic was off. It was pulled out again. I was gonna say the ideological confusion that they have is definitely poisoning, like that corruption you're talking about.
Yeah.
And that's probably where his failing is that ideological confusion in the political arena.
Well, remember, the purpose of the propaganda is not to make you a perfect fascist. It's to make you a perfect fascist subject.
Mm-hmm.
Right? There's a critical difference there. And Peterson is one of those perfect fascist subjects because he understands innately the idea of obligation to and from, right? Which is not a libertarian principle by any stretch of the imagination. They try to eschew all obligation. That's their end goal. No more obligations. I don't have to stop jacking off and doing heroin at your preschool. I'm not required to do that. You can't make me. If you make me, you're the bad person. No ethics.
You're gonna get mad if I goose step with my AK-47 at a school.
Well, yeah, if I'm shooting heroin while loudly watching child porn on the train, you can't get mad at me. That's a libertarian, just a filthy, dirty dog running around wrecking society, just the absolute dreck. But the fascist understands that train needs to be clean. There shouldn't be child porn on that train. There shouldn't be heroin on that train because we need you to put yourself in obligated service to the state wholly. And you need to hate the other who doesn't exactly mimic you, right? That's the fascist propaganda. And Peterson has just been sucking, just absolutely slurping that shit water right on up and loves it. So he is a fascist in the sense that he definitely has fascist ideology rolling around in his head, but he's not a fascist propagandist. He is the product. He is not the actual fascist. If that makes sense. The idea of the uber liberal, right, like a Pete Buttigieg, who is so arrogant as to say that you can burn cigarettes in your gas tank, and that's why gas should be taxed at the same rate as cigarettes. He thinks lesser of you. What he's banking on is that loyal liberal subjects will rely on the notion of merit to back him up and make his will imposed upon the masses.
Merit or tribalism?
His merit will appeal to his tribe, such that they will.
There it is.
Yeah, such that they will act in accordance with him, despite being lesser than him. And we'll go into why Pete's a piece of absolute utter dog shit some other time. But yeah, that's the kind of shit you're seeing. The relationship is Peterson would be one of, if he was a neoliberal, he'd be one of those masses eating Pete's bullshit straight up. Just absolutely, just spooning in that ice cream, just sucking it on down. No questions.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, man.
All right, well, I'll catch you guys later.
Good having you back. Always a pleasure, brother, and you have a good night.
I'm going to take my bow. Oh, yeah. Later, guys.
Woo!
Later.
Yeah.
Bye, Michael Jordan Peterson. All right, so chat. Last week you asked, is there anything, I believe the question was, and if I'm wrong, sue me. Don't sue me. You won't have grounds. I don't want to see you waste your money. But you can be mad at me. I believe it was, the question posed, is there anything out of Nietzsche that is of utility or use to the left, and I'll extend that to also good. Is he right? And I will pose that question to the rest of the panel here, and you guys take a stab before I take a stab at that.
I mean, like, it depends on what you mean. Like, useful to
Useful to the left. You interpret that how you will.
Well, I mean, look. You should certainly understand it on some level, because it's just critical toward understanding the current moment. So, I mean, honestly, just the answer straight up yes, because you won't be able to understand why we are here right now if you don't at least understand the concept of the Übermensch and, in broad strokes, like what his idea of our pursuit as a society is. And I've been trying to synthesize this in my head for a while, and I can't quite find the synthesis of it, but I think that the two most prevailing pieces of ideology in our current society are standpoint epistemology, and I won't review it. I explain that like every episode that I'm on. But standpoint epistemology and the Übermensch, and in our current moment is the fusing of those concepts to be like to create a system where who the Übermensch is, and this part's my opinion, of course, who the Übermensch is a moving target that is informed by standpoint epistemology, and that is supposed to create, like, I don't know, like cultural momentum that drives us on some level. Now, I haven't really been able to put those to words completely, and I haven't found any theory or writing that really synthesizes the two concepts. But, getting rid of that synthesis for a second, you should know and understand Nietzsche, because the concept of the Übermensch and the idea that the point of society is competition is, consciously or not, a very key part of how our current system operates. Now, in terms of how can we use it, like, is it useful to us, like, on like a praxis level? I mean, there are quotes by many on the left, like Hampton and even Martin Luther King, where they talk about how important the will to power is. Did they mean what Nietzsche means specifically? I have a hard time
Did Nietzsche,
knowing that for sure.
The fairer question is, did Nietzsche mean what Nietzsche meant specifically?
Huh. Yeah. No, that's fair. That's fair. I don't know. I don't know if they meant that specifically, or if the concept of will to power has, like, expanded to be more of a colloquialism that can be interpreted a lot of ways. I mean, you can argue about that yourself. But
small point of order. Der Wille ist Macht, right? The will to mocked does not necessarily only mean power. Nietzsche conflated the two concepts often, craft and mocked, because he saw them as a mirror reflection. If you act, you do. If you do, you've acted, right? You've expressed power through action. But mocked can mean a couple of different things. It can be the will to make, the will to do, the will of action. So the more, technically speaking, the more appropriate way to define that term would be like the will to do, right? Get your ass moving. So it's a minor point. The will to power is certainly a component thereof, but the will to power is expressed through the will to do.
Well, and I think what's important, just beyond that even, is I think what's been important just beyond that is that the concept of self-determination, or not even, or group determination, in the face of overwhelming oppression. Yeah, I mean, that end of it, there can be parts of Nietzsche that you find, if you're especially an oppressed class, that you can find to be, I don't know, cathartic on some level. But would we use him specifically? I don't know the answer to that. You need I am a subscriber to the idea that you need multiple lenses to understand the situation. You need critical lenses, and that a rejection of critical lenses, even if you're like on the right, is super important anyway toward understanding where we are. So I don't know why you'd reject it, other than the fact that you want to pretend that it doesn't exist in the first place, I guess.
I want to put this out here. Chat couldn't believe that we equated the neoliberals to the Ubermensch, the Discord chat. Could not. Thought I was shit posting. Thought I was pure cringe. We really, honest to God, believe that. As they pointed out, the neoliberals, with their obsession with power and control, appear to the external observer as the last man, and as John so eloquently has put it, from your standpoint externally, they're the last man, that thing that is obsessed with control and eternalism and keeping everything the same. But from the standpoint of the neoliberal, they are the Ubermensch, exercising their will on everybody. It just happens to take that form of power while they advance themselves, right? Their obsession with space travel, their obsession with fixing a system that is beyond them, and acting of their own volition on their merit, right, as evolutionary evidence thereof of their Ubermensch status. So I just thought that was interesting, because if that was a shitpost, and we often, when we talk, right, on the show, we often talk about them from their standpoint, to which chat did correctly point out that the external view would pin them as Nietzsche's last man, that rotten, dying thing. And this can be the hard part to grasp. That's true. It depends on your standpoint. That's why, John has been absolutely hammering out negotiating standpoint epistemology and the Ubermensch, because it's very critical. It's very critical to understanding it. We can't, we on the left, the broad left, keep wondering why we lose to neoliberals. And the obvious answer is money, right? That's easy enough. But there's an ideological battle being waged as well. And that is a key component of it that really isn't getting broken down.
Yeah, I mean, my attempts toward those synthesis of the topics is that
self-described merit, chat. I mean, again,
and this is
from their standpoint, it is merit.
This is just as I observed it, but the thing about standpoint epistemology and the Ubermensch is that standpoint epistemology is inherently about valuing outsider perspectives. And again, I do this explanation every time.
Wait, don't bother. Yeah, we've done enough for tonight. I mean,
so
I want to get to
it's about about valuing people who are on the outside or standing on the outside of society, looking in. It's a valuable perspective, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so here's the thing.
But it's about rejecting it ultimately for them. Finding what can be rejected.
If the tension that I find is that if you are pursuing the ultimate person, but the only way that, if you're pursuing the ultimate person as a society,
keep in mind, they're not pursuing the ultimate person. They're looking for the next evolutionary leap. And I want to end it there for a moment. I want to give Arcano a chance to weigh in. Do you find any value in Nietzsche? The particular questions were his notions on will and his notions on, I don't want to say free will for Nietzsche, because he didn't quite think about it the same way as we're discussing, but on his notions of will and his opinions on political opinions as of any use to the left. What do you think? Are you still there, Arcano?
Yes, but I'm not very familiarized with Nietzsche's work.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Fair enough. Do you find another philosopher beyond, I think what everybody would agree is the obvious, that is insightful towards the left and that we should be using or turning to more than we are? Obviously, more than we are.
I think Gramsci, man.
Gramsci? Why?
Well, I think his notebooks, and there's a recent book, and I know we had this conversation outside of the blogger,
Hmm.
is that the author, he goes by Robert Carley, and he published a recent book titled "Culture and Tactics," and he points out how when you look at the how Gramsci was instrumental in mobilizing the police officers, the veterans, the workers, right, to a movement in Italy, right, against Mussolini. Um, and so in that essence, you had these different political entities, different ideological internalizations of identity, right? And I think this is where going back to that conversation of standpoint epistemology, the idea that your view of the world is based on your perspective. Gramsci's kind of approach is even if you look at your own worldview, you can find a thread that connects you with the other, right? And so you're gonna see how that connection actually places all of you in the same predicament, all right? And so this is where we get into that point of waking up consciousness. And so unfortunately, well, until very recently, there's been emphasis in reading more of Gramsci's prison notes as a way to understand race, political sustainability, environmental sustainability, right? So, yeah,
Okay.
that's all I gotta say.
All right, Chet, you got any more hot bomb questions? You're good for lobbing them. Giovanni Nuno, I think is how you pronounce that. Did I say that right? Not familiar with Gramsci, just know that one quote about the old world dying spammed everywhere. Yeah, it gets memed. It's like Mark Fisher getting memed to shit and back. It's a shame getting reduced to a meme. Oh, well. Okay. All right, so John, 3 minutes or less. Do your explanation now. Let's hear it now.
Yeah,
Let's...
no. So, just to pick up with standpoint epistemology, just again, very broadly, standpoint epistemology is about valuing outsider perspectives on society as a whole, and the idea that you can't get a full picture of society as a whole without an outsider perspective, because that grants you like, a 3D view, if you
Right.
will.
It's
Okay,
an
cool.
attempt. Note, it is an attempt to overcome the geometric problem.
Yes.
Yes.
And that can be any number of things. And of course, I'm not ragging on standpoint epistemology inherently. You need it on some level to like navigate society, like period. Sure. Okay, you got that, and you've got the Ubermensch. Now, again, this is one of those things where like I'm not saying that a textual version of what Nietzsche wrote is what's true in society at this point. It's a little bit broader than that. I am saying that the broad idea that society's point is about competition toward ever improving the ability of the best people in society, who are the Ubermensch, right? Or even the pursuit of like one top person or whatever. That the tension there is that outsider perspectives are inherently held by people who are marginalized in a very broad sense, because a group of marginal people, a minority of people, are, for example, rich people and Nazis. Those are always the examples I give there.
Right.
Those are minorities too, but they're not. That doesn't carry like certain weight in the same way that like black people are minorities or queer people are minorities. They're not the same thing, obviously. They technically fit the definition though, and
right. They minority clearly doesn't mean then simply a subset of the populace that does not represent the greatest percentage. It also carries an inherent outgrouping, right?
Yeah,
that's what's not acknowledged, where it is presumed. Just unfortunately, it's not reversed, right? Where we assume that the LGBT, that every race, except for the supremacist elements of those races, are the in-group, and that these, or the classist group, the most readily classist, and the group with the most ability to wield class influence negatively on others, the wealthy, they're not presumed to be the out-group. They're always presumed to be the core in-group with these discussions. So there's an inherent problem in that term even.
But here's the main thing.
Yeah.
Again, the pursuit of outsider perspectives as being inherently valuable in a way that insider perspectives are not, but that being broadly construed as being minority versus majority views. That ideology combined with the pursuit of the most competitive best person or people. Those two things really drive society at this point.
Merit,
and
yes.
Yeah, and I don't think I have to explain our society being based on competition.
Right.
We'll skip that because I think that's like very obvious at this point if you live in this world.
It is at
that
least,
you can tell that that's the way our society is construed right now.
Whether or not it is actually that, or it is certainly the lip service ideological notion, competition is key.
Yes, and standpoint epistemology being important because even the people who and standpoint epistemology, I believe, has its roots in feminism, at least as we understand it right now. And a lot of the people who would say they hate feminism, right? A lot of conservatives still engage in standpoint epistemology because they'll tell you they love to tell you about how modernism is, or not modernism, but postmodernism is taking over the world, and that really they're the marginalized ones, and that they're the oppressed ones. And whenever they say shit like that, whenever they say stuff like, really, we're the ones on, the bad end of things, and minorities have gotten too many rights, they're just doing the same thing, but in reverse. They haven't escaped that form of thought.
Yes.
And it is really funny whenever they wear those shirts that are like, liberalism is a disease. It was like, no, you think the same things. It's like it couldn't be more obvious.
You are just the vulgar form of a rank and file liberal.
So
you are liberalism in its most vulgar and disgusting, and that's why I hate liberalism. So you are.
Here's the crux of this that I can't.
You know what their shirt should read? Their shirt should read, "Liberalism is the disease, and I'm a proud carrier." That would do it. I stand for my disease.
The synthesis of these two things is that...
Wait, hold on, just real quick. There is a poetic beauty then in the fact that they refuse to get vaccinated for COVID, isn't there? Right? So this cancel culture bull, for example, is an expression of standpoint epistemology. Yes, and the relationship of in-group to out-group. Yes, chat. Well, you're going to get showtime, chat. I'm going to tell you what, you are going to get some fucking showtime here soon. 'Cause you're fucking fire.
Oh yeah, no,
but isn't that funny though? Isn't that a funny mirroring? They're like, liberalism is disease, yet they fucking spew it everywhere they go. COVID is a disease they refuse to get vaccinated for.
Yeah.
And they're spewing it everywhere they go. There is a beauty to that. It's just like when you take theoretical, like actual shit from Mussolini and read it. No matter how perverse it really is in the material world and how much it has to be stamped out, god damn if there isn't a poetic beauty to all that. God damn.
The synthesis of these two things is, how can you have the ultimate person if that person wasn't marginalized, right? Because if they were in the majority in all of these senses, if they were in the majority, they couldn't be the Ubermensch because they wouldn't have that perspective that would drive them toward the top, because that perspective is valuable. And if they lack that perspective, then they lack some amount of value, which means they can't be the ultimate.
Yeah.
And what that suggests is one of two things. Either there can never be an Ubermensch and we're always pursuing it, which is a simpler way of thinking about it. But I think it's more of, or at least my initial inclination toward it was, instead of there can't be an Ubermensch, whatever the current version of the Ubermensch is, cannot continue to be the Ubermensch. So there must be a new Ubermensch constantly churning, because again,
Well, the crucible of competition, sure.
Yeah, because if an Ubermensch is achieved from a person who's marginalized in some capacity, it can.
I just want to
Again,
point this
marginalized means a lot of things here.
I want to point this out. I said 3 minutes 7 minutes ago.
Period. Here's the end of it. If if an Ubermensch is achieved from a group who's marginalized, they will become the majority opinion eventually, and thus, in order for an Ubermensch to continue to be generated, the Ubermensch must come from ever new marginalized groups. Yeah. And I don't know. That sounds like I mean, on a base level, that sounds like eternal recurrence, but beyond that, it sounds like a constant cycle that will keep us pursuing it endlessly.
Yeah. I and I think that's pretty interesting. Because what does that mean for the offspring, right?
Right.
So does that mean that the parents must kick out the offspring and for them to develop their own sense of identity and struggle so they can reach their own level of Ubermensch, right? Because they didn't have that essence, right, of self identity and self perseverance.
Through the crucible.
Dude, that is deep, man. That means when for any of us that become millionaires, we're gonna have to kick everybody out, and of our offspring, right? Like, what's my will, daddy? 0. You get 0, and that's because I love you, right?
Yeah. Well, think
Kropotkin said that.
Think about this though, right? Because we know the answer. We know from Nietzsche's text that the Ubermensch will be born of man, right? So we reach a paradox that the Ubermensch has to be born from human to overcome humanity, right? We reach a paradox, a contradiction. How do liberals express that contradiction? Do they send their children off into the wilderness to go fight for them fucking selves? No. They let them benefit from all the work that they have done by themselves, good or bad, right? And they spew that down onto them with the idea that we're going to springboard you even further, right? That's the idea of generational wealth.
Yeah, and
so we're going to try to thrust you by force into either continuing to be the overman or you'll be the overman that I never was, right? Eternalism.
And this is,
eternalism and progress through the offspring. So the offspring becomes a perfect reflection of the yourself, and any fuck ups that kid has reflects on you negatively, which induces a deep-seated anger.
And this is one of the things where at least many anarchists aren't afraid when they reach these conflict points to just triple down on stuff where libertarians will be like, oh, nature, or instinct, or whatever. When libertarian or anarchists will just plow through whatever logical barrier you put up and just triple down and say, yeah, that's how we'll do it. Because if you look at Kropotkin, who's one of the anarchists, what he said is no, actually, a good way to handle it in the system is to have 0 inheritance, and you can't pass anything on to your kid, because otherwise society will get corrupt on some level. You know
what's fascinating though? On that point, I agree with Kropotkin. If you have the communist society and you have the socialist economics, there's no need to pass things on to your kid beyond sentimental trinkets. There's no need to hoard generational wealth. We eliminate that.
I think Kropotkin made that point is to show how hypocritical that system was to begin with. But it is,
yes.
Again, you triple down on enough stuff as an anarchist, and eventually you do, of course, get to the point that we examined last time, or a couple times ago, which is that bedtimes are oppression.
Right.
But that's another topic.
Oh, that dumb fucker. The fucking, if that really is a child, that child should not be speaking until they've read a book.
I don't think that was a child.
They claim to be 16, but they also have more followers than me, and they say inflammatory shit that actually damages the left. So fair fucking game. Fucking game.
Anyway, the main point here is that I guess these things I guess that Nietzsche is useful on some level, and that he isn't the only thing, but you should understand it at least a little bit.
Yeah, one of the four horsemen, baby.
Did you say horseman?
Yeah, the four horsemen of modernity. There's Marx, there's Freud, there's Nietzsche. I always forget the fourth. Oh, Darwin. Darwin's the fourth.
Yeah.
Yeah, the four horsemen of modernity. Intellectual titans. Badasses. Each with their own flaws. All right. For next week, Arcano, do you want into the next round of free will when we start getting into wider society and shit?
That'd be interesting.
Yeah, we're gonna see where that takes us. Because, like I said, I do a little bit of prep work. Like, in the little bit of prep work I do is like, what kind of shit could this possibly be? And then, like, I just write down some quick ideas and then I walk away. So I do a lot of it live. But I have like diagrams. Like, all right, we got the one monad. Now, what if we had two monads? Now, what if we had more monads? Right?
Mm-hmm.
And then what if we change the geometric arrangement of those monads, not from a scatter point plot to something where there's a command structure, right? Where there's some sort of order the monads are participating within. And I think that exploration is going to be interesting. I might actually pre-draw those and just like load them up like slides. Not in PowerPoint. I'm too lazy. Plus I don't want to download PowerPoint, but like, just an arrangement.
Are you going to draw the pregnant minion again?
No, I'm not doing that again. Although that
you're doing it every week.
That specific arrangement has its own utility, I'll say, intellectually, because there is that idea of the next generation that has to be accounted for, which libertarianism is yet again contradictorily always forced to compete against, right? But yeah, I don't know. I'm just really, like, if I were to be honest with you so far, right, where I'm upset is that I don't have time more in the week to think this shit out. And I don't want to bombard the Discord chat with it to like start thought bouncing these ideas and basically have the discussion before we have the discussion, and it feels forced. But where I am really, really proud of it is where I keep finding new, like, the core flaws of libertarianism. And it just boils down to, like, you are the most irresponsible fuckers who have ever existed. Like, you are so fucking irresponsible as people. It is an embarrassment and an indictment of general society that you even exist. That the ability for somebody to think like you exists. Society has failed in the most disastrous of ways. And you have ruined the planet with your bullshit. I think that's personally what's appealing to me the most, because I am a petty thing. Never pretended to not be petty. Yeah. So no, well, yeah, same time next week. We'll do it again. I'll send you a text before we go on. Make sure everything's kosher.
All right, that's cool.
Yeah, fuck yeah. So this has been the Sons of Trier live stream and podcast. I'm Dan Cohen. I was joined by John Sinclair. Earlier we were joined by Michael Jordan Peterson. If you watched the pre-show, we were joined by the True Horror. Cenk did not show up because it starts to get a little weird. Cenk is still very much in the throes of liberalism, even though he's I can tell he's trying not to be. And thank you, chat. And of course, our special guest there, Arcano, who apparently wants to make this more of a routine thing. And I am down because there's a real intellectual titan. Me, I'm, I
Nah,
yes.
man.
Take the damn compliment. You're smarter than me. I try to surround myself. The real trick to being me is just surrounding yourself with people who are clearly smarter than you.
Not, to be fair, Arcano, not every episode's like this. Some episodes we talk about whether or not bedtimes are bad.
Yeah.
No, we really did a whole episode about that. We really did.
You missed bedtimes or fascism.
we really did that. That one was one of my favorites recently, actually.
One of the worst things about Twitter is that you're always at the risk of spilling into the abyss and becoming a brain-rotted just dullard. But one of the joys of Twitter is you get to witness other brain-rotted dullards just absolutely punch themselves repeatedly in the crotch. And
the key to Twitter is to observe as if you're looking at an animal from a faraway place and just don't interact.
Do
Yeah.
not interact, but just observe, and you'll see quite a bit.
You should interact with known quantities that you can control for. When you find a wild card, absolutely treat that shit like Nat Geo and just watch the show.
Yeah.
Just enjoy.
Yeah.
All right, and again, thank you as always. The chat, wonderful. Hope you come back around because you were making it even better. We like we actually really do like the questions. We like the participation. And again, that when I said you might get yourself some airtime, that's not a joke. If you really want to, we can make it happen because you have some interesting shit to say. I think I'm going to end on this note, right? Much like I can appreciate the ideological nuance of somebody like Mussolini from afar, living in Mussolini's world would make me just want to chop people's hands off and become a serial killer to spite that world. In much the same way that if I lived in the world of The Thing, I would be horrified and just die. But I can watch The Thing as a movie and appreciate the shit out of it. Things don't have to be good to be appreciated, but just because you appreciate them doesn't mean that's also like a prescription for action.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I can get my jollies watching Evil Dead or Saw and also remember that, oh yeah, if that shit were real, life would be horrible. You know? So just consider that when you read the ideology in the literary. Yes, you can absolutely enjoy and appreciate it. I love Lovecraft, but if Lovecraft's worldview was imposed upon the world, or his horror, or both, what a shit existence in life would actually be objectively and in an unqualified sense without meaning. It would have no purpose. It would just be horrific and racist and awful tentacle monsters. What they tried in Lovecraft country and notably failed. Sucks. I wanted that to be good. All right. Good night, everybody. Love you. Don't